Good morning. It is 6:16. Gobble, 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 gobble. A little late today. We had a couple of computer problems that we dealt with successfully. Happy Thanksgiving to one and all, even though that doesn't happen until tomorrow. It is Wednesday, November 27th, 2019. Chris, what's the weather? What's the sky and the temperature?
It is 41 degrees. It is clear right now, but it'll get to 54 today. Some scattered afternoon showers.
Okay, so you'll be back with the entire weather in just a little while. Welcome to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone here with Chris Conway. This is Radio Westchester. We are the radio station at the train station. Thank you for joining us today. Again, happy Thanksgiving to all. We'll be talking about that. Obviously, here are the headlines today. Hudson Valley hits the road for the holiday. We'll tell you what the traffic's going to look like, when and where. And another old shoe has dropped. The Yonkers police investigating a 1980s allegation about New Rochelle coach Lou DiRienzo. That plot thickens, as you can see. A case mounted against a Scarsdale coach detail abuse, as public knowledge was there at the time. And also in New Rochelle, a slain soldier from the area received justice 2 years after his murder. And out of Mount Vernon, a cop sued the department for retaliation, claims he was called a rat. Some of these cities just keep on giving. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone, Radio Westchester. Let's go to Chris Conway now for the traffic. Good morning, Chris. Wow, I did it again. It's really amazing. It's really amazing.
It's like a swear jar, but a traffic jar. On the table.
Why don't you do the weather?
It is 41 degrees here in New Rochelle. Again, today will be cloudy, some scattered showers in the afternoon, highs in the mid-50s. Tonight, partly cloudy, getting into the low 40s. Tomorrow, Thanksgiving, a mix of sun and clouds. It'll be windy, highs in the upper 40s. Friday, sunny and 44 in your weekend forecast. Saturday, partly sunny, highs in the low 40s. And on Sunday, it'll be cloudy with a possible late-day wintry mix. The first day of December, highs in the low 40s. And weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's coming up on 6:18. And it's time for the news of the day as we get into 6:19 now. Let's get rolling. And why did my music stop when I made it start, Chris? I make all things occur. Thanksgiving travelers across the Hudson Valley are hitting the roads today on one of the busiest travel days of the year. AAA says New York is expected to see 3.1 million vehicles hit the roads, with 1.2 million more coming from New Jersey. With that many people on the roads, taking a few steps to ensure your safety is vital. Make sure your tires are properly inflated. You'll be inflated after the holiday, Chris. Make sure they're inflated.
Before too.
Experts recommend to replace them if they test poorly. It's kind of silly. No one's going out and doing tires today, but whoever writes this stuff says, well, I got to put all stuff in there. They also suggest to avoid Wednesday evening's traffic. That's tonight as much as possible. Instead, they say get some rest tonight and wake up early tomorrow. That's kind of what we do in the radio. It depends.
So that's the news. Don't do anything tonight. Just relax on the sofa and watch
Chill.
Law and Order episodes.
Eat the turkey or watch football, whatever it is you do, hockey. This story now expanding, if you will, and it involves the beloved coach here in New Rochelle, the football coach Lou DiRienzo. This out of several outlets today. We're going to try and get Bob Cox on the line at 8 o'clock. Yonkers police said they're investigating an unspecified allegation from the 1980s involving New Rochelle High School football coach Lou DiRienzo, who has been suspended from coaching and teaching since November 13. School district officials did not immediately respond to a question about whether their suspension of DiRienzo and ongoing investigation of him is in any way related to what Yonkers police are reviewing. A police spokesman, Detective Lieutenant Dean Politopoulos, I got it right, Politopoulos, said he could not go into detail about the police investigation because of the nature of the complaints and the victim's age at the time. As you know, on Sunday, the team will be headed to the Carrier Dome for the state championship, and so far it doesn't look like Coach DiRienzo will be there. We'll have more to say about that, pardon me, coming up later in the hour. This out of Scarsdale, and again from Lowhut. More former students of the Scarsdale Catholic School filed lawsuits this week that accused a former sports coach who taught there in the 60s of sexual abuse. They also claimed the coach's behavior was well known in the community, Chris. The two latest cases filed in Westchester County from Charles Booth of Florida and Daniel Fagan of Connecticut accused the former physical education teacher and coach Edwin Keener of abusing them as children. And again, these are instances of suits that are allowed for 1 year window that ordinarily would have been outside of the statute of limitations. In New Rochelle, and out of News 12 this morning, a man convicted in the fatal shooting of a New Rochelle resident in Washington State has been sentenced to 43 years and 4 months in prison. This according to the Pierce County Prosecutor's Office there. Daquan Forrester was shot and killed on October 28, 2017. Charging papers say the victim was leaving a club with his wife and friends when an argument started with the convicted murderer. This according to the News Tribune there. Marshal Marion Wilson of Kent, Washington, is one of two men tried for the death of 22-year-old Joint Base Lewis McCord. He was the soldier. So, justice, even if 2 years late, has been served. This out of Mount Vernon today. Another gift that keeps on giving. A Mount Vernon cop is suing the city and police department over what he claims is ongoing retaliation for his exposure of corruption, including a sergeant calling him a rat and a snitch in front of his colleagues at roll call. This in Lowhut today. We'll be asking Mayor-elect Sean Patterson Howard about that at 8:35 today. Marash Shea, his name is Mike Bovell, the 12-year-old veteran of the department, also claims he was falsely accused of assaulting and stealing from suspects and that a small plastic wrap was placed in front of his locker this summer. He insists his latest allegations were ignored when he reported them to then-Chief Richton Zaidai. In an audio recording Bovell secretly made of the August 7th roll call, he alleges that Sergeant Michael Kushner is heard saying 4112 South 2nd. There's rats, not like the rats here in headquarters. Bovell 40 alleges that Kushner motioned to him when he said that, and the room broke into laughter. That's an interesting case, Chris. It sounds somewhat credible, but what do we know? We just report the news. We don't conclude it. Oh boy, arts and crafts stores going away. This out of Lowhut today. A.C. Moore's parent company, New Jersey-based Nicole Crafts, announced in a release Monday that all 145 stores will close, with up to 40 of the closing locations becoming Michaels. There was no word on whether the 3 locations in Westchester, Rockland, Dutchess counties will transition to Michaels, as all will close. The Rockland County A.C. Moore in Nanuet Center, 2 miles from the nearest Michaels, located in Spring Valley, is one example of how arts and crafts folks will have to travel. You ever go in those stores?
No, never.
Actually, they're pretty cool. You can buy anything and make anything from nothing. Like one day when I'm old and decrepit, don't look at me like that. I'm not quite there yet. I'm going to buy those little white balls and paint them and make my own Christmas on.
I was going to say, that's Saturday?
No. Good morning. It's 6:24. Fine. All right. Those raises are in the news today. Westchester lawmaker pay raises totaling $499,000, equal to half of the proposed tax cut. Well, a plan by the Westchester County lawmakers, this had Lowhut today, should have told you that, to give themselves double-digit raises. The amount would be cut in half. A proposed. I misread it. I'm going to start over. Okay, a plan by Westchester County lawmakers to give themselves double-digit raises would cost $500,000. We know that, and it would have to be added to the 2020 budget. The amount would cut in half a proposed cut to the county property tax levy. The lawmakers are expected to offset some of the spending to whittle down the net addition to $275,000. So, I'm going to flip back to New Rochelle. This has been debated for a while, but it's now going to happen. And that is the Stop and Shop, the auto dealer going into the Stop and Shop over by New Rock. Another supermarket can be found to replace the closing of Stop and Shop. An auto dealership is expected now to finally take over the 65,000 square foot space next year. and a community center inside would be included if the plans if already opens its proposed dealership. And that's just a sticky wicket. We have a hard time getting supermarkets in some areas. And someone called in the other day about this and said it's absolutely dingy and dangerous. And did you ever been in the parking lot?
No, I have not.
On Harris Street?
I found that the discussion you had fascinating with, the name escapes me right now, but you discussed this, that parking lot. Was it Bob Cox 2 days ago?
Yeah.
About how awful that is.
Well, it is dingy. And you know what you're tempted to do because the lot is never full because it's just such a bad location. If you have a meeting on Harrison Street, you'll tend to park in there. But you know what they do? They pay some guy to sit in there in his car, an unmarked car.
Yeah.
And then when you don't go in the store,
when you leave the parking lot to another,
they put a boot on your car, and then they got their hands out. And you're doomed. Smart move for them, but bad for us. All righty. This is just a little hint before we roll back to traffic and talk with you a little bit. This out of News 12 today. Doctors are encouraging people to have Thanksgiving dinner with this side conversation about early cancer screenings this year. Imagine you're sitting at the table. So, Uncle Joe, what's that big growth coming out of the side of your head? Don't you think you should talk to a doctor?
Makes you long for talking about politics at the
table. Don't talk about Trump. Talk about the lump. What's wrong with me this morning? Oh, you look good with the third ear, Chris. I think you ought to talk to somebody about that. Francine Jackal makes a health normal part of the family's Thanksgiving conversation and wants others to do the same. Physicians say a major misconception is if cancer doesn't run in the family, there's nothing to fear. Everybody, well, they're right, but you know what? It's a nice idea. I don't think people are going to start talking about cancer at the table. When you get Uncle Joe sitting in a recliner, he's had 7 helpings of turkey. He just ate a lemon meringue pie. He wolfed down 2 bowls of pasta for dessert, and he's eyeing the meatballs that Nana just put out on the table. Tell him to take a break, eat a little less, he'll live a little longer. Or better yet, try and have some fun over the holidays. Try not to talk politics if that's possible. But nonetheless, happy Thanksgiving to all. Let's take a look at what's coming up today, Chris. We're going to open up the phones in a little bit, see what people are planning for the holidays, what kinds of holiday traditions that they have, and talk a little bit about what's going on with Coach DiRienzo. Also look at some of the national stuff. Then Vince will be joining us. We haven't talked with him, Vince from North Jersey, about his conversion to God. Now, you haven't been a big part of that yet, but wait till you hear this story. It's good stuff. Jeannie Zano, Professor Jeannie Zano, Political Science. We will get a helping of political science stuffing. Al Tarantino, scheduled at 7:20, although we went back and forth yesterday, so I can't guarantee that. But we're going to bring Bob Cox on at 8 o'clock. He was up all night working on his story with Coach DiRienzo. We will reach out to him. Sean Patterson Howard, the mayor elect of Mount Vernon, is with us at 8:35. We're going to ask her about, she had mentioned on these airwaves, Chris, that there was corruption in the police department, and so she knows of which she speaks. We're also going to ask him, we've been taking a lot of notes from callers and guests lately, what she knows about the problem with the sewers and how are they going to keep the federal government from suing them for tens of millions of dollars. And then again, as one caller asked, hey, we see the trucks are moving, and I guess we owe some debt to Richard Thomas on the way out, Andre Wallace holding the fort, and how the new mayor moving in, or whom gets the credit for that, or was it just the old adage, if you throw enough shoot at the wall, some of it sticks? And at 9 o'clock, Harlan Ullman will be joining us. He is one of those international experts. We're going to pursue this incredible story, and I'm so disappointed that people are trying to make, and they could be Democrats or Republicans, but the people are trying to pretend that Ukraine, they can't even get out of their own way. They can't find their ass with 2 hands, and they were going to do all that sophisticated hacking. It's a sad day when instead of just spinning the truth, we weave facts out of thin air. And the left does it too, but they're not in power right now. So that's all coming up today. And today's, the bottom of the hour, or the top of the hour rather, was brought to you by United Hebrew New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Pena and Kahn, plug-in virtual reality, and Dominic Sicars, who also will be 8 o'clock hour, will bring you Jake's football picks for Thanksgiving. He will get a turkey leg up on those. You like that? Good, huh? And remember, don't talk about Trump tomorrow. Talk about the lump. Tell Grandpa. Why do you have 60 ears, Grandpa? Why do you have hair on your ears, Grandpa? Okay. Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont, open 7 days. We go now to Chris Conway. Chris is going to share the weather with you, and then we'll even change up the music to make it sound cool, and he'll tell us about sports, and I'm going to make stupid comments about the sports. Chris, you're on the air.
It's 41 degrees here in New Rochelle today. It'll get up to the mid-50s, but some scattered afternoon showers tonight. Partly cloudy, high 43. Tomorrow, a mix of sun and clouds. It'll be windy, highs in the upper 40s. Black Friday, sunny, highs in the mid-40s. Saturday, your weekend forecast, partly sunny, high of 41. Sunday, cloudy with some possible late-day wintry mix. If not good, high in the low 40s. Weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
And now here's Chris with the sports. Chris, we got sports music on for you.
Oh, nice. Light night last night in the world of local sports. Only one local in action. Minnesota broke a 2-2 tie with 6 minutes to go in the third period on a Ryan Suter goal. They defeated the last place Devils, who lose again.
Such a shame.
3-2. High hopes with the Devils this year, and it's just been a disaster. Tonight in the NHL, Carolina.
Did you get stuck?
No.
Tonight,
Carolina
his voice. He's still getting the rust out.
Is in Madison Square Garden, take on the Rangers, and the Islanders will try and start a new point streak tonight. They visit the last place team in the Western Conference. They are in Los Angeles. In the NBA, Brooklyn is at Boston. And
so I said, can I do my basketball sounds?
Yes.
Oh, three-pointer. Good.
Who needs a computer with sound effects? And the Knicks will lose tonight to the defending NBA champion, Toronto Raptors. And that's what's going on in sports. I'm Chris Conway.
Woodpecker. Nose pecker. Okay. I know I shouldn't do that when I'm on the film. All right, that's the sports with Chris Conway. Chris, no news in the world of football? Not football, but real football.
Wednesdays they're a light day.
But tomorrow's big day.
Well, tomorrow we got a couple games, and we'll get to that with Jake later. No locals in action. The Jets and Giants both play Sunday afternoon.
Well, a couple of things. By the way, it looks like the president's getting to throw, which I don't blame him. And of course, if I were advising the president, I would tell him to throw Giuliani so far under the bus. But what they're doing is they're orchestrating, as well they should, if you hope for the best for them, that Giuliani's position now is I'm his defense attorney, and I'm out there doing this stuff. And the president said, well, the defense attorney, my attorney's doing what he does. I don't tell him what to do, he just does it. So we saw that yesterday. We also saw yesterday, and of course the president's not going to do this, that Jerry Nadler, he is the head of the Judiciary Committee, and he has invited the president to the impeachment hearings. And one of the things that people are saying is kind of true, is that the best thing that could happen for the president is just let this go to impeachment, because he's not going to get convicted.
Yeah,
and even people that don't like him, who are fair-minded, probably feel, well, at least as I do, that it probably doesn't rise to the level of removing him from office. So it does two things. It makes the impeachment as a process go away, even if there is a trial, number one, and number two, it gets thrown to the people where it probably belongs. Founding fathers wanted an election to be so sacred that that a president's actions would have to be so egregious that both parties wanted him out. Yeah. And if both parties don't want you out, you're going.
Right.
That's our system, for whether people like it or not. So from the standpoint of the president, that's a good thing. From the standpoint of people who are offended by what he does, I appreciate that, but well, that's what the polls will be for, unless he truly does something where a Republican says, no, Republican senators, I don't want it. Meanwhile, Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher, whose legal cause was taken up by the president and led to the firing of the Secretary of the Navy, will be allowed to retire. A planned disciplinary hearing will be scrapped. And the Department of Justice is going to appeal the ruling that we knew that came out about Mr. McGann, who they wanted to testify. That will go to probably the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court almost certainly is going to say, yes, you have to testify. But even then, when these people get into the actual hearing rooms, Chris, the issue's going to be that certain areas are, either because of national security or other issues, they're going to be protected by executive privilege. And by the way, I did want to add one thing. By the way, the president said his comments about, I guess of all people, to Rudy Giuliani, to Bill O'Reilly, who's making his way back, which actually I'm okay with. I mean, even one of the things that Professor Breslin has convinced me more is always good. Mm-hmm. And what he did, what he didn't do with women, he certainly paid a price. He lost millions of dollars. Yeah. But it doesn't make him any less a compelling figure in the media. And there does need to be an opposition, no matter how much it makes me want to chew on the table when it's constructed and one-sided. Nonetheless, if he's the guy, he's the guy. But anyway, that's who the president told us to. And he said Rudy's a great corruption fighter, which he was once. Now, let me see what else I got. A couple of other things in my bag of tricks. And we're going to open the telephones. 914-222-3141. 222-3141. You're welcome to call. We'll be sharing some other issues with you that may interest you. Believe it or not, defeat of AIDS is near. And now this is a good health story and a Thanksgiving story. Victory is in sight. City officials say they are on the cusp of the once unthinkable ending the HIV/AIDS epidemic as new medicines and treatment drove down the number of new cases to a 17-year low. It's a medical advance that one Dr. Only Blackstock only dreamed of when he first began treating HIV/AIDS victims in Harlem in 2005. It's a pill a day, he says. And anyway, without getting into the technicalities of it, the city actually has $23 million invested in funds in 8 clinics offering low to no-cost services for HIV testing. So that is a pretty cool thing. Now, we've got something for everyone today, the right and the left. After all, it is the giving season. What would you like to see? Something that covers a right wing, and I'm not talking about the extremes here, a right wing issue or a left wing. What would you want? What would you want, Chris? Come on, you pick it. It's like a Christmas grab bag.
All right, let's start with the right wing.
Okay. This out of the New York Post yesterday. The hate crime stats the left won't touch. Last week, the NYPD published its hate crimes. This is from a Robert Cherry in the Post. Last week, the NYPD published its hate crimes report for the third quarter, and the results are troubling. You will hear much about it from, quote, the social justice types, unquote. The incidents involved often defy the left's neat racial narratives, forcing normally vociferous progressives to go mum. Start with anti-Semitism. Over the last 12 months, there were 246 anti-Semitic crimes in the Big Apple, up from 144 over the previous 12 months. These attacks brutally targeted Orthodox Jews, often in broad daylight in Brooklyn neighborhoods that are home to the community. And there's the anti-LGBT violence. The most recent quarter tallies 20 incidents, bringing the total number of attacks over the past 12 months to 63, up from 48. Finally, there's the anti-Muslim violence, most of which goes unreported and isn't well captured in the report as a result, yet it is possible to track trends. In January, there was an attack on a Muslim father walking his daughter home from school, blah, blah, blah. Now, here is the hit, and this is the article, and this is something that the people are reluctant to publish because it would be racially insensitive or predicted or at least interpreted by some. Mr. Cherry says black perpetrators are especially prominent in anti-LGBT crimes, comprising 10 of the 12 arrested for those crimes. He says he's yet to hear progressive politicians. You would think that skinheads and white supremacists are the only source of bigoted violence. In a recent essay on anti-Semitism, Senator Bernie Sanders framed the problem as one having entirely to do with the far right. But in many urban areas, the problem is complicated by the fact that many of the perpetrators themselves are minorities. Just because the facts make us uncomfortable doesn't mean we should ignore them. And again, their point is it's not just skinheads and right that do these things. Yeah. Minorities, do these things as well. Now, a little treat for the left. Da-da-da-da. Now, this by a conservative economist, John Crudell. He says, I don't have hard and fast rules about many things. I go by the if it's none of my business, if it's not hurting anyone rule. You might know it as live and let live. But what he's upset with and horrified with about gun violence in this country, and he thinks the government needs to clamp down on it however possible. Sure, there's the Second Amendment, but the founders, he says, of this country, when they were drafting this amendment, had no idea what kinds of guns would be invented 200 years later that could kill large groups of people instantaneously. And he also says, Chris, he understands the allure of guns and their role in family traditions. He says he shot them, he likes guns, a Uzi was his choice in the automatic variety, and I understand the thrill. However, this is where he goes for the juggler. He got an email the other day from the Henry Repeating Arms Company. In the subject line was this, are you ready? Nothing says Merry Christmas like an AR-7. And nothing says idiot like the person who wrote that line. He said there was an ad below the despicable introduction, a gift for those who blaze their own trail, followed by pictures of the AR-7 and the fact that it was available in 3 colors. There was also the boilerplate comment about how the company hoped, quote, your loved ones never actually find themselves in a life and death situation and would only need the gun for target shooting with friends. In case you weren't up on your gun specifications, Henry is nice enough to tell you what you are getting when you plop down a few $100 for your AR-7. It was first used mostly by people in the U.S. Air Force, and through the years, the AR-7's reputation for portability, ease of operation, and reliability has carried over to the civilian world. It's only 3.5 pounds. You know, I'm probably going to be doing an ad for this for Gun Nuts. 3.5 pounds. This sounds perfect also for people who want to wreak havoc on society. The AR-7, and one of its great gifts and features, it can carry a large quantity of ammunition without adding much weight to your gear. Companies like this should give people who don't like guns a reason to continue their dislike. Now, there's a middle ground. We'll get Vince all agitated. Vince from North Jersey, he's a gun guy. I mean, it's okay to say all those things, but it should be said in plain language.
Yeah.
Or maybe, or not. Amazon's in the news, but believe it or not, they're in the news now. They have facilities. I don't know if they have facilities in the places that are more spread out than Westchester.
Yes.
You know, we're all congested. If you go over to New Jersey, even parts of Staten Island, where the part that's not congested on the West End, there are Amazons. Well, Amazon workers at the Staten Island packing facility say Jeff Bezos deserves a lump of coal in his stocking for running roughshod over them, especially during the busy holiday season. More than 100 Amazon workers and their supporters gathered outside the facility to protest working conditions that they say only worsen as the e-tailing giant gears up to deliver the rush of packages. The warehouse in Staten Island, right in front of it, they were chanting slogans and demanding a manager emerge from the building. So not all is fuzzy and peachy at the land of right on time. Fuzzy and peachy. I hit the button, Chris. I really did. In the land of Amazon. And right on cue, we get a call. It is 6:44. You're listening to Radio Westchester, Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. Let's go to the phone. Good morning. You're on the air.
Bob, it's Tom from Pelham.
Thomas, good morning. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Good morning. How are you?
We're doing okay. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours, my friend. What's going on?
Same to you, my friend. Remember a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, it was something with the parade in Rochelle and the balloons and the bridge. What was going on? I remember it was a funny story.
Oh, well.
Can you recount that?
Yeah, sure we can. Well, that's when I was involved more heavily. I'm on the board, but that's when I was the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce. And my colleague and I, she was a direct report, but she was really a partner, Jennifer Lancer, who then ran it and now has moved on to other things. But we had this idea to do balloons, and which we had seen them do up in Connecticut, and of course the great one down in the city. And then Jennifer, of course, being the smart one, said, we designed Mighty Mouse right here in New Rochelle. Wouldn't it be good to get that balloon? So she busted her butt to work on that balloon, and sure enough, we got it. But then, when we realized that he might not fit under the overpass 3/4 of the way down North Avenue, we took measurements, we did all kinds of stuff, and at the end of the day, I mean, you can't buy the balloon days in advance because they're really expensive or rent them. So our estimates were correct, but we didn't know that we did the very best we could. And after it was filled with air, we had this plan that we had tested conceptually, if you will, where we were going to push his face down and drag him through on his face. And man, did I sweat that, because it would have just been all over, because he was ahead of the parade. It turned out to be an iconic photo now, and I have one at home, and I'm very, very proud of it, as ought Jennifer to be, because she's the one that figured out to get that one. I wanted balloons, but she figured out the balloon, you know. And she's done a terrific job of it ever since. But the thing was, yes, we were petrified that it wasn't going to fit. And we were prepared at that point. We had a whole process worked out. We were going to let air out it if we had to. But, man, pulling that down, I sweated right to that day. It was one of the worst days of my professional life.
Yeah, I know. I remember you made a big point. What year was that?
2016, I remember it well. And what's funny is someone took a photo of me, which is really one of the best photos I've ever taken. And when I look at it, I say, boy, photos are deceiving. I was miserable for lots of reasons, personal life, everything. It was just a terrible day. And I look great. Meanwhile, I was saying, if that thing doesn't go through, I'm going to be laughed out of the city. But we're prepared to let air out of Mighty Mouse. I think I said Mickey, but that was the issue.
I don't know what made me think. I don't know what made me think of that. But when I tuned you in today, I began to think about Thanksgiving and the escapades of Bob Marrone and Mighty Mouse.
Oh, Mighty Mouse! Yeah, no, that was just. Well, I'm going to tell you something. I've gone on the record. It's why I bring up Jennifer Lancer's name, who actually, for reasons I don't understand, I have had some really hard jobs in my life. I'm just being brutally honest. I've had some really tough executive jobs where it kept me up nights, and all as we all have. But I hated nothing in my professional career as much as I hated the running of that parade. I'll put it to you this way. Suppose I told you how to get 2,000 people on a street corner on a specific day in November. 2,000 people, 15 bands, 10 floats, 20 different marching areas, get sponsors, and they all got to be at the same place, coordinated with the cops and the fire department and the traffic. And who doesn't show up? I can work myself into a lather. I hated it, running that parade. But Jennifer loved it. So the combination of my angst and her commitment, because angst does give you energy. You know, you want to get stuff done. And then negotiating with the bands. And you hire a band, they're supposed to have 12 to 30 people, 10 show up, they want the same money. Then the best...
Isn't there a saying that everybody loves the parade?
No. Everybody but Bob Marrone loves the parade. Now, for the first couple of years, I was also the TV guy, but then Jennifer started doing that, which made sense. It almost was like a reward for all the hard work, but Jennifer was where the rubber met the road. And believe me, it drove me crazy, too. But yeah, it really is hard. Anyone who tells you they run a parade, buy them a beer, buy them a drink, pat them on the head, and then ask them what's wrong with them.
Is it true that the parade in New Rochelle is the second largest in the state?
Yeah, well, you know, I guess no one's ever actually measured it, you know. But yeah, we don't know anyone that is as big as ours. Although, you know what was unfortunate, and to give you a little inside baseball here. When we first got the idea to want to do parades, I went up and sat down with the people who run the parade, which is a bigger parade than ours, in Stamford, Connecticut. And do you know they wouldn't give me the name of the provider of balloons?
Really?
And
why
yes,
not?
if you're listening in Connecticut and you run the Chamber of Pox on you, because they felt that, well, they didn't want anybody competing with them. And what do you think they did to an athlete like myself, a hockey player? What do you think it put inside me? Now I was...
Yeah, you were worked up and charged up and motivation. You were motivated.
Yeah, and so far as I know, no one's ever taken an iconic photo of a symbol of their city like we now have. Every ad you see for our parade shows Mighty Mouse. And so we kicked
it.
Can I say this bluntly?
That.
You have more money, you have all that stuff from Greenwich, blah, 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 but you'll never get the passion and the community feel because yours is a nice commercial success. Ours is a human success, and we kick your ass. So thanks for helping us out. All they did was fill my bill. Now, what's
I'm
on
going to
your...
get you off that. I'm going to get you off the topic now because I
Good.
can see you're amped up. All right.
Well,
Michael Bloomberg. Does
Yes.
he have to get the nomination? You really believe that?
Does he have a chance? I think it's scant. Yeah, I don't think he has a. He got a shot though, sure, but I don't think it's very good.
Yeah.
He has to clean up on Super Tuesday like nobody's business, Thomas.
How does Joe Biden still? How is he still leading the polls? Does anybody watch?
You're not going to like this. How is he leading the polls? Because every day, and even if you're a Trump supporter, every day Trump does something that gives people agita. And at least he's like he's like throwing water on the fire, but he is like water. He's not inspiring. I agree with you.
Boy, I saw him in a few of the debates, and he was. Oh, I'm out of time.
The same
You're
way.
out of time, Joe.
The same way,
out of time.
the incompetence and dissembling of the West and like what the left and what they're doing to our schools, et cetera, things like that, gave us Trump. Trump is going to give us a sanguine, under-energized president. Everything is a reaction rather than a plan. That's why I support Mr. Bloomberg, but I don't know if he can get it done. Mm-hmm. Now, if this may surprise you, I actually believe right now the country needs a center-right president. But whether it's true or not, the narrative that's evolved is that the Republican Party now is so tainted that a person like that can't get nominated. A Kasich can't get nominated. A Portman can't get nominated because I think
that would qualify me. That would qualify me for the presidency. Center-right.
Well, center-right is where most of the country is in their hearts, I think. People really are patriotic. They love the country. Even liberals do, as much as people say they don't. Far-right people do, blah, blah, blah. But the extremes are killing us. I'm talking too much. So what do you think?
Bob, I just can't get over what we talked about yesterday, you and I on the phone, about Memorial Field, and now all of a sudden it's getting cleaned up because Richard Thomas is no longer in office. Well, I can't get over that.
Well, I wrote your note, and it's right here, and I'm going to be asking the mayor-elect about it at 8:35. I wrote,
I want you to ask the county executive.
Oh, I'm going to ask him.
All he had to do was put his thumb up, and it would have gotten done in a heartbeat.
Actually,
the county executive could have gotten it done.
Actually, it wasn't that easy, because what they wanted, and this is something where Richard didn't get credit, they wanted, as Richard did, they wanted to know where their $4 million was spent before they sent any more money to the city. And when Richard asked that question, they threw him even deeper underwater. So to be fair to Richard and the county, they wanted their money, and Richard said, I've been asking for this since I got in office. So,
the story of the mayor of Mount Vernon not being able to get bills paid on checks that he signed. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. They ran the man out of town.
And it did start in the beginning. I mean, I was in his office, and I said, where are your pencils? You got a nice new office here. Where are your pencils? Well, they won't approve my request. Now, it doesn't mean that the request was done properly. But again, there's nothing like living through something and having been there. It started very much in the beginning. Now, there are always many sides to the story. I got a couple of emails last night saying that the mayor, or former mayor, doesn't always sound credible to them, and that's fair. Everybody's always spinning. But my God's still where yours is.
But does Ernie Davis wield any power anymore there?
Behind the scenes, he ran out of gas. If you remember when he was running, and you know how I am, I'm not too hard on people, and I won't say myself a softball guy, because when an issue gets tough, I get just as tough as the issue. But when I'm running the political interviews, I feel that it's up to the people to decide. So I give them every chance to be themselves. But the one area I'm very, very militant on is when you don't call, when you don't show up, when you don't answer the phone, because that gives me a great indication of what you're going to be like when you're in office. And Ernie failed to report for half of the interview. And believe me, radio time is expensive, and particularly on terrestrial. Where my former bosses put a lot of money into WVOX, and so when we get a guy or gal on for 10 minutes, that is a gift. It's your opportunity. The station is handing you money, okay? And to not show up tells me a lot about how you're going to be physically as well. That's why I'm so hard on these. And then the people that run and don't put a phone number in, they already think they're God. Well, just fill out the form and maybe I'll call you back. I rip their hearts out. But anyway, following that whole thing, Ernie, yes, he still wields power though. But because Ernie was there so long, he's a dichotomy. You know him at all? It's impossible to meet him and not like him. Impossible. Impossible. There are people.
Well, I'll tell you, I've tried listening to his show. It's impossible.
Well, he's not Mr. Excitement. No, he needs a co-host. No. He has a lot of insightful things to say about race and how to deal with it. Very fair-minded, but he needs a host with energy. But I've actually had people say to me, these are quotes. It is no indication of any real person. But there are people who say, I think Ernie's correct, but I love him to death. You'll actually hear people say that. Ernie's a special case. I love the guy, and I still love talking with him. But, he was in charge during an awful lot.
Bob, what do you think about career politicians? Do you think that should not be that, serving in politics should be you go in for a period of time and then you get out? Making a career, a livelihood out of it from your youth to your elderly state. Do you think that's correct? I don't like that.
I think it depends on the job, and I'll tell you why. And I've gone back and forth on this. I like it when, and it's an old Federalist conservative view that we all love from Jefferson, et cetera, that it ought to be the citizen who comes in and represents his area. However, let's take the case. Even people that don't like George Latham have begrudgingly said that he's done a good job. We heard it the other day from Mike Duffy, who's a Republican, who's not crazy about anybody with the D word. And one of the reasons he's doing a good job, and even the spin part of it, is he knows all the jobs these people have had. George is probably the best guy at articulating how government works, even when he's done the things he's been criticized for, like avoiding a vote or whatever. So there's something to be said for that. There is also something to be said, if you listen to Harlan, if we look at presidents right and left, but Clinton and Mr. Obama on the left and Mr. Bush and Mr. Trump on the right, all these guys, with the possible exception of Clinton, who at least is a governor, they come so totally unprepared, and they're in the job 2 years before they get good at it. I mean, by the time he left, George Bush was a decent president when he realized he was being, pulled left and right by neocons, and for good or ill. I would like to see them be statesmen. So I don't know. I can't answer it. I guess what I'm saying to you is I think that the people who are legislators should be term limited, but I don't think executives should. But again, you could get. I'm a hypocrite that way, but I've seen what happens when they don't know what's going on, and even now the president. This is with all due respect, because one of the things that the president, he's done stuff that has been like a hip shoot, but he's done it with the best of intentions. He wants to get out of these wars, but they're hard to get out of. So what did he do? He pulled our troops out, and now he had to send them back in, because these things are so damn complicated. So I don't know. I know that it's hypocritical, and I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but that's my sincere position. California has been ruined by term limits. Know why? Let's say I want to get elected for my last term. Tom comes to me. So, Tom, how's the union doing? Bob, I could deliver you 10,000 votes, but 5 years from now, your budget's going to be blah, blah, blah. I said, well, I give a shit. I'm out of here. and that's one of the things that destroyed California. So I don't know.
Being president is even more difficult than running a parade.
10 times, and that's why I never criticize. You notice you've never heard me say that President Trump's golfing, or when Obama was president. They can do whatever they want because they're never off. They're never.
Yeah, golf. You could golf when you're president, but you just shouldn't be golfing when there's something going on that's very earth-shattering, like people's heads being cut off.
Well, whatever the case may be.
Running out of the Rose Garden to play golf.
Or whatever the case may be. But you know what? If you really think that play golf, around the golf is, if you take a shower, you groom yourself, you use the bathroom, you play a few holes of golf. I don't have a problem when they do that because they're never off. The middle of the night they get away.
I'll tell you one thing. One thing I'll never, ever forgive President Obama for is when Benghazi was right in the middle of Benghazi, all right? It was an ongoing, active situation. He went to bed because he had to get up early to catch a plane to go to Las Vegas or somewhere in Nevada to campaign. I'll never forgive him for that.
Well, you know what? And this is something I would forgive even the worst presidents for. Only because you don't really know what their schedule's like and you don't know how they've handled it. But certainly the optics were terrible. I've been very, like, a guy that a lot of people hate and I didn't like when he was in office, but I still admire, was Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney did a lot of crazy things that at least we thought it at the time. But if you read his books, this is a guy who dedicated his whole life to his country. And I'm kind of kind towards presidents. I don't, if they don't perform well, I'm not crazy about it. But man, you said it yourself. What a crazy job. Who would want to do it?
Dick Cheney is amazing considering his health situation from a very early age with the heart.
Yeah.
And what he's gone through medically, and to have a demanding job like that, I give him credit for that.
Well, you know what I love about Dick Cheney? Now, again, this is a guy, I used to call him Darth Vader, came under a rock. I didn't like a lot of the things he did, didn't agree with it. But what I love about him now, you know what he does? He goes out in a camper with his daughter, with his granddaughter, who I think is, I forget now, is an archer. She does some sport, and forgive me, I forget about it. But she does some sport. Just her and his daughter. He doesn't go to Secret Service. He goes out in and I guess with his heart medicine and his new heart, he goes out in a camper and goes to her games. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. And again, this is what we forgot how to do in this country. Well,
I just hope that Dick Cheney isn't shooting any arrows around his granddaughter.
But do you hear my point? But see, I love this country so much that these men that were women that we didn't agree with, we got to stop hating them. When they're in office, they really are trying to do what's best for the country as they see it. And we got to learn to forgive that. So, I mean, I always think of a guy like George McGovern. He was too far to the left. He wasn't a good candidate probably, but he was a war hero. He flew 24 missions in B-29s or B-17s, I forget. And yet he was treated like he was some sort of a communist wanting to betray. We got to stop that. Same thing with Dick Cheney. Anyway, that's how I feel about that. Hey, listen, thanks very much. And did you hear Tom?
Yeah, Bob, happy Thanksgiving.
Hey, you too. Did you hear Chris with the news before? He expects the Islanders to start a new record. A new.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's face it. They're gonna be in the upper echelon of the NHL at the end of the year. They're gonna get into the playoffs. And I want to see who the starting goalie is going to be in Game 1 of the first round, because Barry Trotz has been alternating back and forth since Game 1. And they've both been playing very well. So I want to see when we get there. It's a long way to go. A lot of things can happen. But who is going to be the starting goalie Game 1 for the New York Islanders?
Well, keep in mind.
As you know, as the goalie goes, so goes the team.
Yes, and keep in mind, though, he's not afraid to pull the plug. If you recall, the year they won the Cup, 2 years ago, Washington won the Cup, he started Hellebuck. And after two crappy games, he had no problem putting Holtby back in, who wound up being a near MVP. So,
yeah, you're right, Bob.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for the call.
All right, take care, Bob.
All right, take care. That is Tom from Pelham. And we move forward into the 7 o'clock hour, 914-222-3141. Chris is anxious to catch us up on the weather, so we're going to do that now. Chris, weather.
Good morning. It is 41 degrees here in New Rochelle at 7:05 in the morning. Today it'll be warm, mid-50s with scattered showers throughout the afternoon hours. Tonight, partly cloudy, highs in the low 40s. Tomorrow for your Thanksgiving, mix of sun and clouds. It'll be windy, highs in the upper 40s. Black Friday, sunny but cool, highs only in the low to mid-40s. And the weekend forecast, Saturday, partly sunny, a high of 41, and Sunday will be cloudy with some possible late-day wintry mix, highs in the low 40s. And weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. It's voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you, Chris. I'm bopping to the music. I like it. It is 7:06. I've got my headlines right here, but first, the bottom of the hour was brought to you by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care, and I knocked down one of my easels, a top-rated campus of senior care, uhgc.com. That's not as important as the copy as treating our sponsors properly. We also are supported by the law firm of Pena & Con, plug-in virtual reality, and today, this week's football picks, in fact, this week there'll be holiday picks, Thanksgiving Day picks with Jake. He'll be in shortly. Dominic's Fine Cigars brings you that. They're licensed retailers with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Patrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont, New York. And while I'm not destroying the desk here, I'm going to come back now with some of your headlines. The top story this morning, of course, is it is the holiday. Happy Thanksgiving to one and all. Please be careful driving. We've got a story here about the roads. The biggest advice they're giving you is, and you really should check the tires. Even when I drive Rex, I make sure they have good tires, Chris. You got to have those wheels or you can't make the deals.
If you're driving in Pelham in your car for 45 hours... Because you can't
You're going to bring up Pelham. You're going to bring up the Pelham, all the construction in Pelham again, aren't you? I want somebody torches. See, I could never be king. I could never be king. And that's why I never want to be a monarch. Because here's the sweet guy that just said, forgive everybody, but in the moment I can't. Yeah. We would drag out whoever their traffic or building guy is, and we would put him on a flatbed truck, like tie him to a thing, and then drag him through the streets where everybody's had to wait and have them throw them. We wouldn't get them hurt. Just
some Nerf balls or
no, a little more than that. I'm thinking golf balls, but below the head, and but his hands side, and you just throw them at the son of a sea cook. Okay, I'm moving on, and it's not fair. I'm not trying to be fair. I'm trying to exercise the demon that says, why couldn't you do this in the summer? Why did you do it after school came back? Why did you do it on your main thoroughfare and then it's 4 or 5 different locations? All right, I'm better now. Why'd you bring that up? You're not a nice person.
Well, I mean, it's the holiday, so it's a festive time. I thought we needed to balance that a little bit. With some talk about pegging people with golf balls if they're tied on flat.
All right, I'm going to see, I have to be forgiving. Tomatoes and rotten bananas, okay? That's much better. All right. Anyway, please, folks, be careful driving, and they suggest you don't drive tonight, that you get up real early and drive in the morning. Yonkers Police, and this is a story we've been following for you, and we're going to be calling Bob Cox during the next break, try and get him with us at 8 o'clock. He's done an exclusive story on this in depth, but other people have picked up the story. The Yonkers Police Department has confirmed exclusively, this is when he wrote it to Bob Cox, to talk of the sound that a complaint was filed against New Rochelle head football coach Louis DiRienzo. This back on November 19th. Quote, we do have an open investigation regarding a complaint alleged to have occurred in the late 80s, said Yonkers Police Commissioner, or spokesperson rather, Dean Palatopoulos. Due to the age of the victim at the time, no other information will be released pending further investigative process. Now, according to knowledgeable source familiar with the matter, after DiRienzo was reassigned, quote-unquote, by the New Rochelle Superintendent, Dr. Feo, on the 13th, a woman telephoned Feo to say that after seeing DiRienzo in the news following his suspension, she recalled, and this troubled me, Chris, a suppressed memory from around 1988 that DiRienzo, while an employee of the Yonkers School District, engaged in some unspecified inappropriate manner. The superintendent called the New Rochelle Police Department, who advised Fejo that the complainant should be the one making the report, and the report should be made to the Yonkers Police Department. Now, this is why. Now, this is this new state law, Chris. Keep in mind that he could be subject to, under the New York State Child Victims Act, signed earlier this year by Governor Andrew Cuomo. Accusers have up until August 14th, 2020, to file a complaint. Now, this is 31 years old. And this is why people shouldn't be running in the streets until they know all the facts. Not that there was this other shoe. But now, in fairness to the coach, fairness and truth is a difficult thing, because now I got to flip back the other way. Now I understand perhaps why the superintendent had not to make any quick decisions about this. That's one, but two, I have trouble with suppressed memory. I really do. And now I wouldn't, now I would understand if the people who were defending the coach said you're hurting his reputation. Because in the former case, it was simply following protocol and people became into a mob. Now's the time to be angry unless this woman can show some proof. Okay? Because now you may be hurting a man's reputation from something that happened 31 years ago. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And see, that's the problem with what we do, and that's what makes it so difficult. Fairness is based on what we know or we try, not what we feel. And I just have this, when I saw a suppressed memory, do you remember about 10 years ago, there was it was mostly women, say what you will. And again, women have been abused since time immemorial. And anytime you run into a woman, God bless them, who has, and it's men too, but it's mostly women, because it's mostly women who've been sexually abused by men when they were children, who has a borderline personality disorder. It was almost always, well, it could have been abandonment, but frequently it was sexual abuse as a child. Yeah. So I get that, but there was this rash, and I knew some women came forward, and they were always women with problems generally. Oh, I have this suppressed memory. I was raped by 6 people and a bulldog when I was 8. And chill. Yeah. Are you sure? So just to be sure. Okay, and that's not to denigrate the women. I thought I made a very balanced thing. Women have been abused by men since time immemorial, and as children since time immemorial, and the problem is bigger than we know, and even to the extent that incest is a problem that has plagued women horribly over time. So I get that, and I get that they have to be careful. But if you're going to come out with a suppressed memory, you better be on the mark. You better really have your shoot together and not have some... I got one woman who told me she had a suppressed memory of having been born. This is my favorite story. Now, how I got around it was a relative. I won't say her how. I just got over a suppressed memory, Robert. And I said, oh, really? Yeah, I had this suppressed memory, but it was from another life. I lived in Atlantis back in the time, before it sunk. I said, okay. And I said, how do you know that? Well, the walls look like in the Flintstones. And I was a guy, too, by the way. And you know how this is? I could not say this on the regular air. Okay, yeah. But it's an absolute true story. You know how I found out that she really didn't have a prior life? How? I said, what hand did you touch yourself with? And she said, what does that have to do with anything? I said, you weren't a guy. I rest my case. All righty. So now I see. One day I'm saying I'm defending the police the superintendent. Now I'm defending the coach. But it's the same dynamic. Let these things play out. Don't go assume that this coach is guilty. It's not fair. Yeah. But hopefully we'll understand the situation that the superintendent was in as we pass through 7:14. Now, I know I was supposed to do something, and I can't remember what it was. Chris, do you? What do I know? All righty. I was going through some of the sports pages here. I had a couple of questions for you. The Yankees are still looking for a great pitcher. I find that ridiculous. They do need another pitcher.
They need a starter.
No, but what they had, we need another hitter. We need this. You only lost because of one bad pitch. Good grief. It was a guy you give. Man, all I know is it's just me. And I get it. Mariano had that great record, so when he blew the World Series once, it was a sign of his great character. But all I know is I'm paying a guy to pitch, to work maybe 50 days a year, because he throws 101 miles an hour, $20 million a year, and that one dopey pitch, him and the catcher never be back. But other than that, don't change a thing. All right. Now there's nothing else in sports I want to ask you about. So 914-222-3141, 914-222-3141. I know when I dropped my, my schedule I threw on the floor too, or is it under here? Did you see my schedule? Do you know where it is?
Not.
Well, I have it memorized. We're going to be joined by Vincent in a little while. I'm going to ask him if it's true. Did you see what Rick Perry said about the president?
No, I did not.
The former governor
Of Texas.
And then the energy secretary? He went on TV, on Fox, of course, the other day. And he said that, I'm not kidding, that the president was sent by God.
A
President.
lot of people believe that.
But why? Because God has often sent, people who are who are unusual. No, but good grief. It just gets me crazy. So Rick Perry said that on national television. And I know there was something I was supposed to do. I just can't figure it out. 222-3141, 222-3141, and the phone is ringing. Good morning. I hit it. Did you see me click that? He's going to call back because he's annoying. That was Vince. I absolutely clicked that on. Or did I miss it with my fingers? Do your fingers do what they're supposed to do?
Yes.
Mine don't.
Say.
Do you know I have typing dyslexia, for real?
Yeah.
I'm ambidextrous, right? And one of the problems with ambidextrous people like myself is that sometimes literally the right hand and the left hand don't know what the other one is doing. And so there are certain letters that no matter how much I try, I tell my right hand to do it, but the left hand does. Mm-hmm. So like I misspell Rochelle all the time. C comes in before the O. I no matter what I do.
Yeah.
I have like dyslexia of the brain. There he is. He's going to be annoying. I know he is. This is going to be awful. All right. Good morning, Vince. You're on the air.
Good morning, Bob. How you doing?
Pretty good. Now, I need to ask you, inasmuch as you have found the Lord in the glove compartment of your soul, that's the name of it. You have a soul, right? Is that your car?
I have a Kia Soul. You're absolutely right.
Now, does that have anything to do with your finding the Lord?
No, well, we all have a soul.
Well, in your case, no, your car.
And it's white. It's
Yeah,
not
I was
black.
going to say you have a black soul and a white soul. Boy, you are really struggling.
Well, I believe in diversity, Bob.
Yeah, I know that. Now, does your church? And I'm just having fun on this holiday. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. But listen, does your church believe that the president of the United States, Donald Trump, as Rick Perry has said? And of course, Rick Perry now has to leave because he's implicated in the Ukraine scandal. That God brought him down, that he's the new Messiah.
No.
Run that by your congregation and see how that flies, son.
I was reading that article. It's pretty bizarre. And Nikki Haley also said that. Well, the evidence of it is that. Well, people need jobs, and the economy is doing well, and because of Trump, the economy's on the upswing.
Do you know
Well, it was on the upswing since the day Barack Obama took office 8 years ago.
You mean 12?
So,
all right, whatever it is.
yeah, 10 or so, whatever it is. So no. We don't believe Trump was.
Well, even if he is responsible for it,
in any way, shape, or form.
Did you know that John Gotti used to really made his neighborhood safe, and that he, people reacted the same way. Remember that we were overturning cars when he got convicted? It's wrong. Yeah. And the only reason they said it was wrong is that they loved him. It had nothing to do with whether or not he was guilty. But that dynamic exists in the human condition. And I'm just, and you see it on the left, too. Some guy can shoot a cop 3 times right in the head on national television, and he's innocent. On the left will say, no, this guy, he's a victim of racial injustice. He shot the cop in the head because of something that happened 100 years ago, or whatever the case may be.
I was just recently down in Atlantic City, and
what were you? Do we want to know what you were doing down in Atlantic City? You can tell us. No one's listening.
Well, I was hoping that God was going to affect how the dice fell, and that little ball, when it bounces around in the roulette wheel and all of that kind of stuff. But Well, I didn't play anything, so it doesn't matter what he says.
Well, you were down there on business. You were down. Now you were down on a taxpayer dime, were you not? Ah.
Partially.
Yeah. Well, actually, you were at a conference for legislators, or.
Yeah, it was the New Jersey League of Municipalities. So the league has a convention down in Atlantic City annually, and it has the usual convention stuff. A convention floor that has various vendors selling everything from software to big trucks, and
red light cameras.
Yeah, I mean all sorts of parking meters. I mean
things to take our money from us, no doubt.
And then it has also a series of conferences and seminars and things like that were actually very, very informative. I was glad I went.
Now, let me ask you something. Was it bipartisan, or did you guys roast Democrats as part of like a feast? Look, we're roasting a Democratic congressman here. Look at him.
It's totally bipartisan. The league is just everybody who is in municipal government can be a member. And
so did you have little badges?
We had little badges, yeah, and we went around. It is amazing how much little cucka stuff people pick up at these conventions.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, I've been radio could get free pens. And then if I get one more bottle of hand wash, I'm going to stick my head in mud and lick it just to say, look, okay, I wash my hands. Good.
Well,
pure aisle.
One of my fellow council members came down with us, and I said to him, let's have a contest to see who could collect more pens, and I collected 42. So I'm convinced that the only people who make out at these things are the guys who sell pens.
Now, Chris, you knew Chris Conway from our old lives, but say hello to Vince, Chris. See, now, Vince. This is a classic public servant for you. He sees free pens, right? Grabs them all up. It could have been your tax dollars. Look, I'm just.
Well, they were giving everything you can think of.
Oh, I know.
Hand lotion and those little squeezy, things that you stress relief.
Stress ball, yeah. I need a stress ball.
Everything you can think of. There's a million people who are consulting engineers in New Jersey, and I think every one of them are at this convention. It must be such an incredibly competitive field.
Oh, it is.
Filled with all these people. But it was good. It was a good time. We did actually get work done, and had a good time. Our mayor, myself and another council person, our CFO, and the recreation director there. And
well, good. Now, did you? Now I know where you are. It's a Republican stronghold. But are there any Democrats around? I mean, did any Democrats take the bus ride down, or were they pushing the bus? Did they have to go to the back of the bus?
It's interesting that you use that metaphor, because we had gone to an event, party that was sponsored by someone in the evening, and we were, within walking distance of our hotel down there, and so we leave, and the mayor said, "Well, I'll call a cab for us." We said, "No, it's a 10-minute walk to the hotel. Let's walk on the boardwalk."
On the boardwalk.
So we start walking on the boardwalk, and he says, "I don't want to walk." So he sees one of those guys, with one of those rickshaw things that they push on the boardwalk.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure.
The guy pushes it. So he calls the guy over, and he said, "Can you take the four of us?" The guy goes, "Yeah." So we all hop in, and the guy's kind of pushing us. So my friend, who's the council member, said, he goes, "I think he's struggling." He says, "I'm going to go out and help him." He jumps out, and the two of them pushing, so I lean out the side of the thing, and I say to my friend, "Hey, send the guy in. Tell the guy to get in." So this guy gets in. He sits in the chair. My friend is pushing. We're going around in circles, and we're doing all this mayhem. And so I said to the guy, have you ever had this? Has any, customer ever made you ride and they push it? The guy's going, "No, man, this is the first, for me."
Did he realize? Does he realize that he was dealing with public servants? Did you have little badges on?
Well, so what happens is, we got talking to him. He was this guy from Ghana, and he was telling us about his, his life and all this other business. So I said to the mayor, somehow I said, "Hey, mayor, Bob." So the guy looks and he says, "He's the mayor?" And I said, "Yeah, he's the mayor." And he goes, "Of Atlantic City?" and I said, "No, not of Atlantic City." I says, "We're from a small town up north." But the guy was shocked. He thought that, like, mayor of Atlantic City was sitting in his...
Well, I'm sure he's had it. Now, I guess you were all crushed in there. Were you on one another's laps, perhaps?
No, not even a little bit.
No, okay, because this would be a nice little scandal. We're talking with Vince Russo from North Jersey. That's like when I chased my car and those stories. You do remember when my car was stolen and I saw it being stolen and I ran after it? That's an interesting thing, what your instincts are. If you'd have said to me, someone's stealing your car, what do? You call 911, right? I ran after it like I could tackle it.
That's natural, But then later on you think, well, what if I would have caught up to it, And
I was totally prepared in my brain to tackle it. It makes no sense. And then my poor friend, who was a little overweight, the guy, it's a story to tell for another day. But the best part was some guy pulls up, as you know, tries to say, "I saw the whole thing, get in." I said, "I'm waiting for my friend, the fat guy." Yeah. I thought he was chasing you, man. But you can't make it up. And then the cop, when the cops actually caught the guy, because they were chasing him, and I got my car like eight blocks later, and the cop said, "All right, give me your name, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I run customer service for Merrill Lynch." Remember, he wanted to arrest me right there. His mother, "Oh, really? My mother has a problem with that firm." Anyway, I digress. So, Vince, what do you think? Where do you think we're headed with impeachment? You lived through Watergate. We followed it together. See, I think he will be impeached, or it'll get to the Senate. They'll either reject it or he'll be acquitted, but he's not going to be removed from office. But this definitely happened. That's the first question. Second question, what do you think of Giuliani?
Well, he's going to get thrown under the bus, and I think it's starting.
Yeah.
because I came home yesterday, and my wife said to me, "Did you hear about Giuliani?" And I said, "No, what about him?" And she said, "Well, Trump said, well, Rudy, he's his own man. He does things on his own and blah, blah, blah. He is going to take the fall for this stuff. He's going to get the blame for it." And I don't think that there's going to be a removal from office. The Republicans have already said that they're not going to do it. And unless there's a smoking gun in Watergate, because we look back on Watergate, and you have to remember it was the same partisan tenor in the beginning of the impeachment. The Republicans were dead set against removing Nixon, but once the tapes came out and once Nixon was being heard as a member of a conspiracy, they really had no choice, and they would have removed him had he not resigned.
Well, remember, the conspiracy to obstruct justice, I think that see, the rules have changed so much. I mean, literally, how many days have gone by since this president was elected that weren't major news coming out of the White House for some rule or protocol that was either ignored or broken? I don't think we have the same standards. I think that Nixon would have been long gone already in that era.
Maybe, but see, I think now you're going to need to have something so demonstrable.
As well you should, yes.
Well, I think we have enough now, personally, but it's just not going to fly. I mean, the Republicans are never, ever going to vote to remove him.
What about Giuliani? What do you think is going to happen? Wouldn't it be funny if he has to flip, like all the people he got to flip? Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be some justice?
Just like all the people that backed Trump before this, who have been,
gone to jail and everything.
Yeah, cast away side.
That didn't happen. That didn't happen. And Russian didn't hack us. Do you believe? I want to have fun with this. I want your reaction to this. That the incompetent and corrupt people in the Ukraine were capable of hacking our. I don't even like to justify it by saying that because everybody knows they didn't. But what do you think when a whole party is putting out a narrative like this, and they're not going to have to pay for it because the people don't care?
what do you say? I mean, when someone says something that's not accurate,
like every time Kellyanne Conway opens her mouth, the world is flat. That's why I got to get out of this business soon. I'm going to be dead soon anyway. I'm 70 years old almost. But it's just, I can't handle that stuff anymore. I want to dance, Vince. Remember when we were in corporate America? I respect the dance. I respect you trying to spin me. Like at least Baker. Howard Baker used to say, even before the tapes came out, he used to say, we need to know what the president knew and when we knew it. Not that, right. I mean, there was no break-in. I mean, there was no break-in. Who said there was a break-in? Well, the police said there was a break-in. Well, it wasn't the cop who found it on the door black. There you go. Found the tape on. I mean, it's nuts. I'm really going to start taking drugs.
Well, see, that goes to what I was saying before, though. Howard Baker said, what does the president know, when does he know it, prior to the tapes, and that was, hey, unless you show me the smoking gun, I am not going to be in any way in favor of impeachment. However, the big difference, I think, between then and now is that you had people like Baker who, once they were presented with the smoking gun, realized that they were going to have to impeach. To these guys today, Mitch McConnell, he could literally see a tape of Trump cutting somebody's head off in Times Square, and he will not convict him.
Well, he'd say it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Or he'd say it was
or it was some news media or something like that. I mean, it's very strange how this thing has evolved.
Fox News. President attempts to remove tumor from person's neck and is falsely accused.
So now, has Bloomberg bought any airtime on your show?
No, we're going to reach out to him. I've already got on the record. I mean, after starting this wonderful radio station, if I could work for Bloomberg, I would. I would do that. I care that much about the country that I would love for him to run, because I worry about a guy called in earlier, Tom from Pelham, a guy I know well. He's not the biggest Bloomberg fan, but I told him, I said, I'm right out there. I want Bloomberg to run. And he talked about Biden, and Biden just, I answered, the Biden answer is the same as the Trump answer. The left's policies drove people so nuts that they wanted Trump. And Trump's going to, get people so crazy that we vote in a guy who's going to sit there and spit on himself. I'm the president, right? I hate doing that to Joe Biden. Such a good and decent man, but I was tough on the Republicans, and I didn't. In fact, I have to say that the Republicans 4 years ago were a hell of a lot more interesting than this group of Democrats. Oh my God. I don't even watch these debates. It's a waste of time. You can get it down to 4.
I've watched all of them, and they say the same thing over and over on each one. I mean, there really is nothing.
Because they're given talking points don't vary. Go ahead. I'm running for office, Vince. Give me a topic. Go ahead. Give me a topic.
Okay. The economy.
Okay. We need more jobs. That's going to be my answer. Now, ask me any unrelated question about the economy.
Well, how do you think the stock market's doing?
The real issue here isn't the stock market. It's that we need more jobs.
I know.
No, give me another shot. Be as ridiculous as you want to be.
Well, the price of sugar went down dramatically the other day.
You see, if people had jobs, Vince, they would be buying more sugar. We need more jobs. It's just because they got some consultant, who the hell is calling me? Some consultant came in, boppity-boppity-boppity-bop. It is 7:35. Yeah, I need to go to Jeannie Zano, whom you know and listen to. Vince, I want to thank you. You have a great holiday, and we have a lot more to come today. It's going to get very interesting before it's over. Thank you.
All right, happy Thanksgiving, Bob.
Yeah, same to you and yours. Take care. All righty, here we go. Let's go to our next guest. First, let's reset. Chris, the weather. What's going on in Weather World?
Ooh, Weather World. It sounds like a fun place to visit. It is 42 degrees here in New Rochelle. It'll get up to the mid-50s today. Some scattered afternoon showers are likely. Tonight, partly cloudy, high in the low 40s. Your Thanksgiving forecast, sun and mixing clouds tomorrow. It'll be windy, high in the upper 40s. Black Friday, sunny, high in the low 40s. And over the weekend, Saturday, partly sunny, high of 41. And Sunday, it'll be cloudy, with some late day wintry mix possible, highs in the low 40s. Weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris. The bottom of the hour is brought to you also by our friends at United Hebrew of New Rochelle, top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Plug in virtual reality, the law firm of Payne & Con and Aging Issues Management, where about 8 to 10 or so, we will bring you Jake's football picks for Thanksgiving. Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road, Larchmont, and their hearts are breaking over the record that continues to get worse, as Jake is going to be 10-10 soon. Or not. We go to our next guest. She's the very fine political scientist, TV commentator, article writer. Did I not turn you off? Oh, I did turn you off. There you go. She's also a presidential historian. She is a professor at Iona College. Please welcome Professor Jeannie Zaino. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning, Bob, and happy almost Thanksgiving to you.
And you knew I had to go here on the day before Thanksgiving. Will you...
Let me guess, my cooking prowess.
No, I was just wondering if you were going to prepare the old bird this year, or you have someone else dealing with that. Because cooking is not...
I have people dealing with that.
Okay, good, because I've noticed that whenever you're on Fox and Friends and they have the cooking, sometimes they have the cooking thing and they're all working with the chef, they never have you on for that.
I'm not their first go-to person
Fake
when
news.
it comes to cooking. Go figure.
Yeah, do I. We live in interesting times, particularly for presidential historian. Next week, the impeachment process goes actually now more formally, if you will, to the Judiciary Committee. Will the president actually show up?
So next week we go to the House Judiciary Committee. I would not think the president would show up, but then again, these are very strange times, so it's hard to predict. We know, of course, he has been invited. We know that, the Democrats would love to have him there. I think any lawyer would tell you that that would not be a good idea. But the president has flirted with this idea, if you will, on Twitter. So, anything could happen. But I think what Democrats are going to try to do is they are going to try to put together, based on the materials collected and particularly, what happened in the Intelligence Committee with those hearings, both in front of the cameras and behind doors. They're going to try to put together articles of impeachment that, we may see 2, 3, 4 articles of impeachment. And they are going to try to vote that out of committee, which I think is not going to be much of a challenge for them, and put it on the floor before Christmas for a vote. And I do think at this point, unless something drastically changes, that is likely to vote forward, and we'll see a trial early next year.
Well, will this end it? And this is a little murky to me, as much as we've reported on this. Can the Senate say we simply won't have a trial, or will they have to have a trial?
It's not clear in the Constitution that if there's a trial that's held in the Senate, we do know that Mitch McConnell has gone on record and said he will hold the trial. So at this point, I would say chances are they will hold the trial. Whether they have to hold a trial, just like the case of, whether they have to vote on a nominee to the Supreme Court, we thought they did, and then they really didn't. Is a good question, because we haven't seen a decision out of the Supreme Court on that. But I think in this case, at least so far, Mitch McConnell has said clearly he will hold a trial if there is an impeachment vote. And, I think that the Republicans who support the president feel that may work actually to the president's advantage in 2020. And there's several theories about that. Either way, it is going to be probably, we're hearing, modeled if they have one, which I think they will after what we saw with Bill Clinton. So we're probably looking at, 3 to 6 weeks of trial, which, Chief Justice John Roberts is going to be, the judge in charge of. And I think a lot of what we may see, if there's a change on this, is going to sort of pivot on who testifies, if anybody. If we see a John Bolton or, the Secretary of Defense or the Vice President or the President, any of these people testifying, I think that could change things remarkably. Otherwise, I think we're going to see an acquittal in the Senate.
Oh, I think we're going to see, but I really should be asking you this. Don't you think there's going to be an acquittal no matter what, unless something more drastic should change?
Exactly. I mean, I think, a John Bolton is the type of character who, it all revolves around the Republicans in the Senate. So, you need somebody to change their hearts and minds, or at least the hearts and minds of a number of them. And as somebody like a John Bolton or the vice president testifying could do that, a Rudy Giuliani. So, but barring that kind of testimony, we are still looking at an acquittal in the Senate, although we've heard from people who have said that there are senators who are on the fence on this for good reason. Cory Gardner out of Colorado, he's in a very, very tough re-election. Mm-hmm. Susan Collins in Maine, Lisa Murkowski, certainly Mitt Romney. But, at this point, I don't think you have enough Republicans who would go against the president to remove him. But again, if you look back to the Richard Nixon situation, it was very late before we saw Republicans move on that as well. And then, of course, he resigned. I don't see any sign that the president is going to resign here.
No, and we have one political analyst who's gone on record and practically bet half of my audience that he will resign. My guest is Professor Jeannie Zaino, mass communication. Excuse me, that's by force of habit.
You are thinking of Jack.
Yeah, he was here yesterday. I'm sorry about that. A professor of political science, also a presidential historian. You've seen her on Fox a lot, never on the cooking show. You've also seen her on other outlets and publishes as well. Going back to what you said before, there are many theories on this. See, I would imagine, and your reaction to this, I would imagine that what would be nice about a hearing is they will be able to declare, see, it's all over now. None of this other stuff. I mean, if after the Mueller report they were calling that an acquittal, imagine what they'll say about a real acquittal. That would be useful for them.
Absolutely. If he is acquitted, that will be huge. I think also public opinion plays a huge role in this, particularly in these, Rust Belt, purple states, or states where, this, sort of this election we're going to see in 12 months is going to be decided is going to be huge. And Democrats have already been responding to that in real time, right? As we saw the Democrats, for instance, in the House switch from their language and move away from this idea of a quid pro quo because it wasn't playing well in the purple states, right? To bribery as talking points. That's all coming from polling and focus groups in these purple states that Democrats are doing. Republicans are looking at that and doing it as well. And that is really, really important because if he is acquitted, you're right, Republicans are going to cry foul. They're going to say it's a witch hunt. Also, remember, in a tight election, it's going to come down to turnout. And, he's the incumbent president. His base doesn't have a lot of reason to turn out. They're satisfied. But if they start to feel like he is under attack, you may see that gin up turnout. And so that's another way in which this could play out in some of these close states. I mean, here's somebody who lost the popular vote and wins the Electoral College. It's going to be another incredibly tight election by all accounts in 2020.
Yeah, the reason I often puffed, I just wrote a note called The Base, and I wanted to go down this other thing further. But let me first, speaking of the base, maybe I can go there. Why does the term quid pro quo bother them? Does it sound elitist? Does it sound exotic? Do they not understand what it means? Do they think it's an Italian dish?
Well, and I shouldn't say it's only the base. The polling is in citizens across
whomever,
the board. Yeah. It's because it's, number one, it's difficult to understand. It's Latin.
No, it's tit for tat. It's tit for tat. It's the one thing that's true. I'm sorry.
It's tit for tat. But also, if you look at the language of the Constitution, they don't mention quid pro quo. What do they mention? They mention bribery. They mention high crimes. They mention misdemeanors. And so Democrats feel that they really have to get to a point where they are saying this was not only wrong, it is impeachable. And that is where you have a real divide. So in all seriousness, you have a real divide with
I understand.
moderates and independents who don't like the president will say, we don't like what he did. We think it was wrong. I wouldn't do it. I don't think he should have done it. But is it impeachable? No, let the people decide.
See,
in a
that's
few months
okay.
at polls.
But
Why
you
do
say,
this?
Professor,
Yeah.
that's okay, and I get it. But having to change word, one of the things that the American people are going to have to come to grips with, and maybe they never will, is that they're a little dense. Quid pro quo is not that exotic or arcane or esoteric that we got to come out with a word that's too strong in order to make a point. Because I tend to agree with those people. It seems the way, and your reaction to this, please, the way the Constitution is set up, they want it to be incredibly difficult to remove a president, and they want it to be so egregious that even the opposition party would want him out. And although there's a little bit good faith built into that. But so I agree with that. But why do we have to change the word because of a population that doesn't read?
Well, let me say on the founders, I think one secret when you think about the founders, and it's not much of a secret, but we don't talk about it enough, is that when it came to Article 2 and the executive branch and the presidency, Madison, who obviously is the father of the Constitution, but all of our framers, were woefully unprepared to create that office, and that is clear from start to finish when you look at the constitutional convention notes and the document and the subsequent discussions. And this, just as an example, the Electoral College, that is not something that most people who think about it at the time or now think was a good idea. That was a compromise that they came to at the last minute. So when you think about something like the impeachment and removal of the president, that's another area where the founders were woefully unprepared. And it makes sense. They were creating the first Republican form of democracy and government in the world. And they were very good on Article 1. When it came to Article 2, Madison was not prepared for that. They didn't want to give the executive too much power. And to your point, they didn't even know what the executive should look like, what it should do, what its powers should be. Certainly how to get him in office. There was a time when they were, thinking about, just having him there for longer periods of time. They were going back and forth, couldn't decide, came up with these 4-year terms, which obviously could go on forever until we get, in the 1950s and we amend the Constitution for term limits. But so this is an example of the framers, I think, not really having a clear handle. And over 200 years later, we are still stuck with this, which I don't think is a good idea. But to your point, it now requires both sides of the aisle in Congress to support removing this person, and that is a high bar. And they use specific language in that document, and they don't use quid pro quo. So that makes people scratch their heads and say, is this impeachable? And I think that's actually a fair question.
Well, sure
because
it is.
Nobody was clear on that. It's wrong, but is it impeachable? Nobody was clear on that. People have their own opinions, but the framers certainly gave us very little guidance on that.
Well, to prove what a good professor you are, and you must have told us a year, 2 maybe ago, that impeachment is a political act. And I've always remembered that, because even in this case where it is gray, they wanted it to be something terribly egregious and everyone to agree. And to your point, Professor, quid pro quo in this case may not justify impeachment from office. But what I find interesting, and this is why I go after all bases, but in this case his base, clearly, unless somebody comes from another planet, the manufacturing of a narrative about the Ukraine being the source of the hacking after every community that does intelligence knows and has said it was the Russians. Why doesn't that bother people? Why is it that I bang my head against the wall to the point of getting crazy? What am I missing? What is it about the populace that doesn't bother them?
I don't think that people stop and think about this too much, and I think that's one of the things the impeachment trial has done, is made people stop and think about that. I think if you ask people just in your life, in your neighborhood, who you talk to commonly, if before the impeachment trial was announced by Nancy Pelosi, did they pay a lot of attention to what Rudy Giuliani and other people, usually people on the right, were saying in terms of a Ukraine narrative as it pertained to 2016? Most people are not paying attention to that. So, I would push back a little and say that, do you have a wide swath of people for whom the Ukraine narrative pre-impeachment or the impeachment inquiry was simply not on their radar. We had the Mueller report, which focused on 2016. Most people said, okay, we spent a lot of time. It didn't amount to much. Let's move on.
But that's
and
not
now
true.
we're still, and you know, may not be true, but now we're still talking about 2016. So I would say, I think if people know the information, get the story and hear it, it would matter to them. But I think for most people, it doesn't matter until you announce an impeachment inquiry like this. Because again, I don't know many people in my life outside of media folks or political people who were paying any attention to Rudy Giuliani's comings and goings and his
Of course they weren't, but
continual suggestion about what the Ukraine narrative was at pushing back.
Do they know where the Ukraine is? Are they aware that the Ukraine is at war with our adversary, Russia? Do they do they know that? Do you think they know where Crimea is and that it's actually not a hand cream?
No, I of course not. I don't think most Americans. I mean, you know, but also I just push back a little bit on sort of ignorant questions, right? You know, most people sure can't point to Ukraine on the map, that they don't know the history of Ukraine. And I think most people in Ukraine don't really know the history of some parts of the U.S.
Well, that's fair.
That's human nature. And I think, you know, to me, their people are busy. They have lives, they have work, they have kids, they know what they know. Sure, we can educate people better. But I don't think we hold people, you know, I don't think, you know, yes, it would be great if we all knew everything, but that's why you depend on expertise. There are people who understand the
thank
situation.
You for going there.
It's Crimea.
You're
welcome. I did that just for you.
You're in an intellectual trap, because that's why we have a Republican form of government that assumes that the experts that we have, like, for example, in the State Department or the people that are senators and congressmen and women, we rely on their integrity and their understanding of the issues, not the manufacturing of issues. And I know that's politics, but my dear God.
Yeah, absolutely. We rely on them. And that comes back to a really basic point, that whatever form of government you're talking about, whether it's a republic or otherwise, leadership matters, integrity matters, intellect and expertise matters. And when you have an electoral system that pushes you in a direction where those things are not valued, as I think we do in our system, you do have a problem. And, you know, it's not just the electoral system, it's a lot of factors. It's new technology and other factors. So I absolutely agree with you. You know, none of us know enough by ourselves to do anything. You know, I don't fix my own plumbing. You have an expert come over and fix the plumbing. We need somebody to deal with the situation in Ukraine who understands it. But that does require a system set up to value expertise. We also have to have a way to assess those experts and make sure that they are not violating the public trust or leading us astray. And that comes back to the Congress, really, who has oversight capacity. And we're seeing that at work now as it pertains to this one situation, but that has been problematic more broadly as well.
It certainly is. And to the other half of this issue, one of the reasons that the president remains strong, and after he's likely acquitted, there will be a close race, is, as someone pointed out earlier, the Democrats, particularly the far left Democrats, keep saying the same things, and they must be tone deaf because the country doesn't want what they offer.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, this, when you think about impeachment, this is Nancy Pelosi's fear. This has been other people's fear. Barack Obama recently came out and talked about it, not directly in the context of impeachment, but you go out on the campaign trail, 2020 candidates will tell you nobody is talking about impeachment when they're on the campaign trail because that's not what people care about. So impeachment moves people, at least moderate voters, in a direction that they're not interested in particularly. And then, of course, you couple that with other issues coming from the far left, where President Obama recently came out and said, and I think this is why we see Mayor Bloomberg and Deval Patrick and others entering the race now, who are saying that you've got to speak to the people who are going to decide this election or you will lose it. And I think that that's a fair criticism. And again, this thing is going to be fought out in the Rust Belt, like it or not. It's going to be fought out by independents and moderates. And so if there's a candidate who is too far left, that is going to be somebody who likely doesn't appeal, and you could see a re-election of President Trump, which, you know, most Democrats don't want to see. So there's a huge fight going on in the Democrat Party on this. You know, one pushback progressives will give us on that, though, is, of course, that last time around we let you get with Hillary Clinton. You stole the election from Bernie Sanders when it comes to the primary,
yes, she did.
and she lost.
Mm-hmm.
So they do push back on that as well and say, look at, and Republicans say, had we gone with, say, Jeb Bush, for instance, in 2016, surely they would have lost to Hillary Clinton. So, they will say our far right was correct in pushing for a more extreme candidate in Donald Trump, and we won. So
well, that's
those elements make this case all the time.
Well, certainly because of other stories that I cover, I get this all the time. You can't do balance in one specific interview or story, but I do. I've been following very closely some of the problems with our school district here, and every time I'm done with those stories, I understand why people voted for Donald Trump. It just has to do with the way the far left creates agendas that make no sense and are manufactured from whole cloth as well. One more question before we go. Does the former mayor of New York, Mr. Bloomberg, have a shot?
I think he does. Several factors come into play. Number one, the calendar change of the primaries on the Democratic side works to his advantage. We now, arguably, we've never seen somebody ignore New Hampshire, Iowa, basically Nevada, South Carolina, and pull it off on Super Tuesday. But given the fact the calendar is truncated and so many delegates are up to grab after those first few, with his money, he can blanket the airwaves, and we've seen it already. You're watching TV, in the evening, you could see 3-4 Bloomberg ads. He has a $30 million buy already out there. So he can do it. He also does appeal to moderates and independents. He won't be on the debate stage. He's going to get pushed back on everything from stop and frisk to the fact he was Republican and independent before he was Democrat, and the fact he's so moderate. But I do think he has a shot. I continually say, never underestimate Mike Bloomberg. He is a man who is very, very calculated, very smart, and he has been successful at this before when other people underestimated him. So I don't think it's a sure thing. I think it's an uphill battle entering late. I think his hemming and hawing is going to turn certain people off. But I do think it is, he's pointing to what you were just talking about, and you tied it back to the education system, which is that Democrats need to do a better job of focusing on issues that most moderates and people in the party, most voters, not just primary voters can agree on. And he feels that some of the candidates out there, Warren, Sanders, and others, are pushing the party too far to the left, and they're in danger of losing. When you talk about something like a $50 trillion health care bill and taking away people's private insurance when millions of people are satisfied with it, and not just fixing the problem that's there, that's going to turn people off. In the same way, when you talk about things like open borders, that turns people off, jobs for everybody. So he's got a point, but again, we've never seen it happen, and it is an uphill battle. I am happy he's running as a Democrat rather than an independent, because I think if he tried the independent route, that would have been, the signal that it was a sign of death. So he's at least taking the route that has a likely chance of at least potentially moving him forward.
Do you know what is interesting in listening to you, Professor, is that, and I do believe my next guest should be coming on shortly, but in listening to you, it makes me realize, why Trump is president, and to the credit of the people that voted for him, is I think about college debt. I think about the crisis with immigrants. I think about all these intractable issues that the regular politicians have avoided or not solved. And not that the president is solving them either or yet, but people got fed up with no progress on this. When there were 3 million immigrants, and now there are 20. When there was X amount of college debt, now there's as much as it is. We have a crisis in this country of health care. It doesn't get solved.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Bob Marrone. And I always say that Donald Trump is president because he understood the crisis that was immigration in the minds of many people in this country that, to your point, had gone unaddressed for decades. President Obama, President Bush before him, they came to office promising to fix the crisis of immigration. We forget President Bush was Texas governor. He was elected in large part because of his ability to deal with that. And yet you fast forward 20 years and you get somebody running in 2016 who's saying, hey, guys, nothing has happened. You had President Obama have to issue an executive order on DACA because Congress couldn't get it together with presidents to address the millions of young kids brought over here. So to your point, and you can go down the list, whether it's healthcare, whether it's immigration, whether it's education, the cost of college. The fact that we have a government that seems unable to address key issues, gun control is another one, shootings in public schools and other public facilities. So that is what gets people frustrated, and they look for alternatives. The problem is those alternatives, like Donald Trump, in my mind at least, are not any better able to address those problems. And so, we have to get to a point where we talk about ways to address those issues versus changing just the person in office who's best able to point to the problem. How do you solve the problem? Because a Donald Trump in office with a Democratic or even a Republican Congress, as he had for the first 2 years, is not able to address the problem.
Well, Professor, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. You have a wonderful holiday, and hopefully someone will be able to cook for you.
Happy Thanksgiving, Bob Marrone. Have a great one.
And thank you so much, Professor Jeannie Zaino. And we're going to go to our newsmaker line. I'm pretty sure I know who it is. We're going to do that right now. Good morning. You are on the air.
Hey, Bob. It's Rochelle.
Yes. Go ahead.
Just a couple of quick things. I've been listening. Could I make a couple of quick comments?
Sure.
Jeannie Zaino was absolutely right about they're going to pick on Bloomberg for being a Republican.
And
I don't think it's going to. I don't think it's going to be from Liz Warren, who also was a Republican up to 1996.
Well, I didn't realize that. Well, you know what? I think in this day and age, that's one of the things that's going to recommend him. Go ahead.
Second, when you were referring to Nixon about the break-in, had Nixon just talked a little bit about the break-in and explained to people that the break-in was a perfect break-in. Like it was a perfect phone call. It was a perfect break-in.
Perfect break-in, my goodness, yes. Or some people would have said it didn't happen.
Right. Well, the other thing is, I was at my favorite Italian restaurant yesterday, and for an appetizer, I ordered some quid with some pro quo smothering it.
Oh my God, quid with pro quo.
But here's my biggest concern. I know everybody's focused on this impeachment and whatever. Here's my concern. I don't know if you watched it yesterday, but the president had that heroic dog that found, and he referred to the dog as a male. Well, shortly after the press conference, the White House corrected it. It was a female. On two, they recorrected and said it was a male. The following day, the Department of Defense said, no, we want to clarify it was actually a female. But 2 hours later, they said, no, we now believe it was a male. Now, these are the people who are here to protect us. And they can't figure out if a dog is a female or a male. This is very concerning to me. I don't know about you, but concerning to me.
Good grief. So now we want the president to be snooping under the tails of dogs to ascertain sex. Okay.
Right. Now, the other thing is, I got to tell you, with Giuliani, I did hear the president say yesterday, I understand he was a mayor of a city. It's not no place that I've ever lived. I live in Florida, as you all know. So I hear this New York City is very nice. I hear he had something to do with something.
Well,
he's a very good. He's a very good guy.
You woke up. You were completely snarky today. I see that you woke up.
Yeah,
with that.
and if I would say just two other things. One, Bob, if you could get video of you chasing that car, I would make a donation any amount to your favorite charity.
Well, that's a great. I probably should have completed the story. What you've got to understand is that I had this Oldsmobile, and you know the way some cars have a very distinctive start, and you recognize it. And we're turning the corner with a dear friend of mine who happened to be overweight at the time, and I hear my car start. And this is a great neighborhood down in Brooklyn Heights. And we had just come from a ball game, decided to get some dinner. And I hear it. So hey, that's my car. And it takes off, and I start running down the street after it. Running down the street. And I don't know what I thought I was going to do. So anyway, some guy pulls up, screeches, Latino guy. Great guy, was trying to help me. He goes, man, get in the car. I seen the whole thing, man. We're going to go chase him. I go, wait, we got to wait for my friend. He goes, who, the fat guy? I thought he was chasing you, man. I said, no. He's with me. He just can't run. And so as we're heading down, you've got Henry Street and all these other streets and Court Street.
Oh, in Brooklyn.
Yeah, and you can see my car going one way with a cop car chasing it, then going the other way with a cop car chasing it, like something out of a bad movie. And I never did catch the car, though, but that's pretty much the story.
Sorry to hear that. Well, listen, I'd like to wish you and your family and your listeners a very happy, festive Thanksgiving. Well, like I say, eat as much as you can and drink, as long as you're not driving, drink to excess.
Okay, thank you so very much. That was, of course, Mitch. And we're going now to Jake's Picks of the Week. Jake's Picks of the Week. And actually, this is for Thanksgiving. This week's football picks are brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Lawrencemont, open 7 days. Good morning, Jake Schaefer. What do we got?
All right, good morning. Excited for Thanksgiving? Big plans?
Relaxing plans. What about you? Big plans?
No, just having a few people over, nothing too exciting.
Going to ingest some turkey?
I think so.
My friend, the guy was on before Vince. He used to be an iconoclast. He used to have duck every Thanksgiving.
Oh.
Just quack. That's because he's a bit of a quack, as you know. Anyway, so let's go. Jake's Picks of the Week brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Lawrencemont, open 7 days. Chris, you can weigh in on this and make fun of his picks? You know more than I do about this stuff. All right, let's do it.
All right, Bob. 14-10-1 on the year, still pretty remarkable. But let's improve on it. Game 1 to Detroit. This is an awful game. I was high on the Lions last week, and they let me down. They are home and getting 2.5 points. No quarterback, really.
Who are they playing?
They are playing the Bears in Detroit, but give me the Lions. Give me the 2.5 points.
Lions with 2.5.
Game 2 to Dallas.
Dallas.
This whole 3-game slate is really tough to pick, but I will root for the Bills, being from upstate and all. So give me the Bills. I will get 7 points in Dallas. Give me the Buffalo Bills. Now Game 3. I picked the Saints for the Super Bowl weeks ago. I hate picking against a 7-point home underdog, which Atlanta is, but give me the Saints giving 7 in Atlanta. So the picks, I will take the Lions at home against the Bears. I will take the Bills on the road. They are underdogs by 7 to the Cowboys. And I will take the Saints in Atlanta favored by 7.
Chris, what do you think of those picks?
I agree with all of them, to be
honest.
honest.
You do agree with all of them?
Yeah.
Okay. So you ready to lay some money down?
I didn't say that.
I'm going to take my $10 credit now and have some fun with it.
All right.
Saints are favored over who?
Saints are favored by 7 on the road against the Falcons.
What's the Falcons' record?
Their record, they've been good the last couple of weeks. They started off terribly, but Atlanta is, let me just check still, bottom of the standings. They are 3-8.
3-8. Okay, now the Bills. Who are they playing?
The Bills are in Dallas. The Bills are.
You get 7, and you're getting the free 7.
Yes.
Okay, I want the Cowboys. I'm
right.
going to lay my 10 on the line.
All right. The Buffalo Bills are 8-3. Dallas is 6-5.
I'm going Dallas, and I'm giving 7. Oh, I'm taking
Their coach is on the hot seat.
So wait a minute, I'm giving 7 with Dallas,
Yes,
right?
you're giving.
And what's Bill's record?
Bills are 8-3,
And Dallas?
6-5.
Then why the Bills getting the points?
They're in Dallas.
It's what's called a Dallas tax. So many people bet on the Cowboys that the Cowboys lines get inflated.
Oh, is that why? So
Also similar in hockey to the Vegas Golden Knights. So many people who live in Vegas bet on the Golden Knights that they have to make the lines bigger. Similar with Dallas.
See, I'm not
except
sure
it's
if I
nationwide.
like this, but you know what? I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to root for Dallas. I'm probably going to... Actually, I like the Bills myself. I'm going to root for Dallas. I want action.
Are you going to actually watch the games tomorrow?
No. No.
Will you be here tangled up in wires in your chair?
Yeah, probably. I will be doing that, I'm sure. All right, Jake's Picks. Thank you very much. Jake's Picks of the Week brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer of the big selection, including Arturo Fuente Padrones and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. Open 7 days, and we will review those results with you on Monday. As the boys probably hinted, we will be doing some upgrades during the break. Now there will be radio and TV tomorrow, but it will be replays, etc., and on Friday as well. Although we may have a surprise for you on Friday morning, so stay tuned to Radio Westchester. .com for that information. It's 8:11, and let's see where we go from here. 8:20. We've been trying to get Al Tarantino, but Mr. You were talking yesterday. Do you have any picks on Sunday? Have you looked at Sunday's games?
Actually, it's really good games, and it is so disappointing living around here. We're stuck at the 1 o'clock slate with the Giants and the Jets.
And there's a great game Sunday afternoon, a potential Super Bowl preview with Baltimore hosting the 49ers.
But what, the 49ers are that good?
I think.
Who plays quarterback
I
for
think
them?
they're the number 1 seed right now.
Jimmy Garoppolo, Brady's former backup.
Oh, that's right. He finally got out of
Who
there.
actually has not even had a great year. The team is so good around him, especially the defense.
Very solid defense.
He hasn't needed to be great.
See, people need you guys because I don't know this stuff. Now, Baltimore's the guy with Jackson. Who Jackson play? He's my new hero. Everybody tells me he's my new hero. Now, is he the future of the game after Brady retires, or is Mahomes similar to Jackson?
Mahomes.
See, I love Mahomes because Mahomes slings the ball no matter what. He can do it on the run. He can kick it to you, for God's sakes. He can use his other hand. He could bounce it off his head. He can stomach it to you.
I'm just afraid Jackson is going to get hurt.
Well, he probably is.
And Mahomes doesn't play like Jackson. Mahomes can sit in the pocket, use his arm, doesn't need to take off every play. Jackson can just go.
I mean, it's a great bet. If he can stay healthy, it's a wonderful thing. Now, has he actually ever been tackled, or does he slide?
He can protect himself, but it's the NFL, and it's a very violent game, and I think
Well,
at
that's what
some
I'm saying.
point it's going to catch up to him.
But he slides?
He does, yeah.
Okay, almost always?
Yeah.
Oh, that's baloney.
Or runs out of bounds.
You know what? That's baloney. I mean, really. It's.
Yeah,
Imagine
just
if
look at
I
how-
told you that the goalie could come out of the net and no one's allowed to touch him.
You just look at how Jackson is
Skip the
built
other-
and Mahomes is built. Mahomes is more stocky.
Yeah.
Jackson's just a big, lean guy that
Thoroughbred
could
kind
be
of.
broken in half at any.
Well, do you know who's thin? I've interviewed 3 times now in person, Eli Manning. And he's skinny as a rail. I mean, every time I interview him, I say, how did they not snap this guy in two? But I imagine he's hard. That's the only thing. He must be very muscular.
Very
Because I've
durable.
interviewed him in the summers where he was like just wearing like a golf shirt and khakis, and he was just a monster. A monster in terms of being tall, but he was tall like a string bean, you know. I don't know how he survived all these years.
Very durable. I don't think he missed one start.
And especially the offensive line he had the last few years. I'm surprised he hasn't been snapped in two.
Exactly.
And how come we don't have any quarterbacks who have CTE? We don't read anything about that. It's
Not
usually
yet, no. Well,
backs.
they're very protected.
They are very protected. Who the least protected? Well, it used to be receivers, but you don't see those come. What were those hits called where a guy came across?
Just over the middle.
Yeah, and then they do it like boom, you know.
I do believe that receiver is the most dangerous position in football because of those crossing patterns.
Or like when they go up in the air.
Yeah.
and then they
they're
get popped.
helpless. Yeah. Well, the penalty now, if you hit a defenseless receiver, it's a personal foul.
But how do you know when he's defenseless?
Well, that's a big debate about where the line is. It seems different referees have different.
But I do understand they don't do any more of those. And I know they used to have a term for it when you come across those backcracker things. I thought the guys would die when.
Yeah.
Darryl Stingley, though, when he lost his ability to move his legs, was that a head crack or was he a receiver? Do you know? Do you remember that?
I believe he was an offensive lineman.
A lineman?
I'm
Okay.
not sure I looked that up.
I met him out in Phoenix where he retired. And I went to a minor league hockey game out there, the old Phoenix Roadrunners, and he was zipping around on his electric wheel. He was in general, other than his legs, he was in good shape. He wasn't on a respirator or anything, zipping around like he owned the place. It was kind of cool that he was in good shape, but still, that was a tough thing for football.
He was a wide receiver.
It was a wide receiver. And so did he get one of those clips from the side? Is that what did it?
Yeah, I do. It was, I believe it was in the end zone, just colliding with a defensive back.
Oh, okay.
And that was it.
Now, let me ask one more question. I know for people who love football, you're going to be insulted by some of these questions, but please cope with me. What is the tight end? What does he do?
Because he blocks and he catches.
It depends.
He blocks, he does do both.
There are
right?
some that are better at blocking, some are better at receiving, some are great at both.
Okay, next thing. Do we have any left-handed quarterback?
Steve Young.
Okay, Steve
Any
Young.
current ones?
I'm trying to think if there's any current.
Now, for him, was it the right guard that was more important than the left guard?
Yes.
Well, and that's because that's where your blind spot
Right,
is.
you're turned sideways when you throw, and you have to protect, most importantly, the side that the quarterback can't see.
See, I'm learning this stuff. I need to now. Right guard, left guard. So the guards can be, but are they usually fast? Because I've seen some tight ends rather that were kind of like slow and sluggish, but big.
There's some incredible athletes that are tight ends. Some can get into the 4.4 40 times.
What's a 4.4 mean? Oh yes.
Almost subhuman.
Wow, 4.4.
I know Deion Sanders ran under 4.2 in his draft combine.
What was he? But he was a receiver though.
No, he was a defensive back, but he did switch to wide receiver.
He would go back and forth.
Yes, he did.
Are there any players left who play both ends of the ball anymore? No. I know in high school I do, but in college?
I think the last one was the guy out of Michigan, Woodson.
Do you know, I remember before the fair catch, it used to be insane for kickoffs. Guys could get killed. I just don't know why they did it, why they would do it. And then there was this great sports writer. You guys may be too young to remember him, Dick Young. He used to call it, when they kneel to take a fair catch, he used to call it the chicken kneel. Mm-hmm. I don't know if people survive that. Now, how many guys are important players who play on special teams?
Well, you got to have, it's a third of the game. You got to win offense, defense, and they say special teams is right up there.
No,
most teams, though, the special teams are made up of, the back end of the roster, the third and fourth wide receivers, the fifth and sixth defensive backs.
But that's how a guy can move on up if he does well at that, mm-hmm. Correct? And have there been any touchdowns off kickoffs this year? There were always a couple, right?
Yeah, always a couple.
There's a couple. There's less. The NFL's changed the rules to make kickoff returns less prevalent because, as you say, they're almost like suicide missions, running the ball, with 11 guys coming after you at 100 miles an hour. So they've changed the rules, or they made it easier for touchbacks. And if you do decide to get a touchback, you get the ball farther down the field than you used to. So the NFL, there's talk eventually of eliminating the kickoff altogether and just starting. The offense starts with the ball at the 25-yard line.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Well, I see why. It's almost insane. I mean, it really is. It really is nuts. Now, what about you don't see too many onside kicks anymore?
No, for the same reason. They changed the rules on that, too.
Why?
Because there was a prevalence of injuries.
Boy, the game is really softening up.
So it used to be you used to be able to just, if you're going to kick the ball to the right side, you could just line up your entire team. 11 guys, just go. Now they've changed that. Now you have to have 5 on one side of the ball and 5 on the other side of the ball. They can't start until a certain time.
Now, are you allowed to hit the kicker on a punt or a field goal? I know they have a roughing the passer, but
they are protected, very protected.
They're protected as well.
No, the only time you can actually even touch the kicker
is if you
get the ball first,
or if you're blocked into the kicker.
Oh, okay. No, but let's say the kicker decides he grabs the ball and wants to run with it, then he's fair game.
Oh,
right?
sure, yeah. Once the ball's in his
hands.
Does
that ever happen?
Sure.
In fact, there was talk There was a soccer player on the U.S. women's team who kicked a 55-yard field goal.
On the U.S. women's team?
Yeah. I think she was visiting the Baltimore Ravens training camp, and she kicked a 55-yard field goal, and there was talk, well, maybe some team should sign her. But then what happens, you can't run a fake because you can't give her the ball to hand off and have her run down the sideline because she would get snapped.
Let me just say, I had an adopted sister. She was my cousin by blood, who was tougher than any guy I ever grew up with. Whenever we'd move, she used to strap refrigerators to her back. I mean, she's a big girl.
Oh, I'm sure, but this kicker wasn't something 5'7".
Well, that's interesting.
Thin.
I'm getting into football a little bit. I'm learning this stuff.
Any hockey games tomorrow?
Chris, that's his job. In fact, we're going to do sports and weather in a moment. But go ahead, Chris.
Nothing much on the schedule. The Rangers are home. The Islanders are on the road. That's tonight. Tomorrow there's no Thanksgiving. The NHL takes Thanksgiving off.
No, they have
Friday,
they have a very good union when it comes to that stuff.
And then Friday I think the Rangers play Boston Friday afternoon, a big Thanksgiving game, the first nationally televised NBC game.
But didn't you say the Devils play tonight or tomorrow night or something?
No, the Devils have off. They played last night.
They did play last night. Right, and they started winning again.
There was one sports score I did not get to. It was pretty decent news. It was college basketball. Duke, the number one team in the country, lost at home in overtime to Stephen F. Austin.
Who are they?
Now, that's the point. Duke was a 27.5-point favorite. It is the biggest college basketball upset in 15 years, going by the points spread.
Wait a minute. You mean, I'm just thinking of the neighborhood where I grew up, where all those gamblers, it was a real degenerate gambler neighborhood. Now, how many points did you give?
27.5.
How many people do you think took oh my God. How many people do you think took that bet?
I'm sure a lot. Duke had not lost a home game to a non-conference opponent in 20 years, especially not one as bad as Stephen F. Austin, for God's sakes. But 27.5 points, lost in overtime by 2.
Well, there's a hockey story that's going to bubble up soon. The coach of Calgary has been accused of using the N-word, and both in reference to certain types of music and a player of color who coached back in 2009. So I don't know. I don't know why it's coming out now. Do you know any more about that story?
No, he will not be. Calgary plays tonight. He will not be behind the bench. The Flames have announced. So I would imagine it's only a matter of time before that becomes a permanent change.
Back in the 60s, and I'm not praising it, I imagine that Willie O'Ree, the first black player in the NHL, he must have heard an awful lot in the cities that he played in. Well, he played out west most of his career, but for this almost major league out there. He played for the LA Blades and San Diego, a couple of the teams out there.
Not a great week for hockey. The Don Cherry stuff. And then Mike Babcock, the coach of Toronto, who was just fired, stuff came out about his coaching strategies, which had been questioned.
Well, one of the things is that the indictment against him, although they should be embarrassed, the Maple Leafs, because they gave him the biggest contract of any professional coach.
He still has 4 years left on it.
$58 million for 5 years, some ridiculous number, or 8 years. They said that he kept telling them to change the roster as opposed to managing who he got. That's what I heard. What did you hear? What did you read?
Yes, that's what I've heard as well. In fact, Lou Lamoriello, who used to be the general manager of Toronto, who now runs the Islanders, apparently one of the big reasons why he left is he wanted to fire Babcock.
Is that right?
And the organization did not. So that was pretty much a tipping point for him to leave.
Well,
is to the Islanders' benefit now. They have the second best record in hockey.
Yeah, Lou's in charge. And I always thought he was over it. I'm an old Red Wing fan. My first coach was a Red Wing guy affiliated with the Red Wings. And I thought he was very overrated. I didn't think any coach is worth that much money. And I love coaching. Coaching, you hear the things I say all the time about the coach of the Islanders, about how good he is. I like Tortorella, some of the other coaches. But still, you should make $3-4 million. But you start making more money than that as a coach.
And plus you're in Toronto, the hockey capital of the world. salary cap to the through the roof. They're paying, and then they don't win a playoff round.
Yeah, well, and that is
they haven't won a playoff round in 10 years.
When it comes to money, they are the Yankees of hockey. Though they're incredible. It's huge up there. You got to inherit a seat. All right, we're going to go to the traffic and weather, and it puts traffic and sports, and it puts Chris right back on the map. Let's see what Chris has to say about that. Chris, tell us. We're going to give you some brighter music because it's, well, weather, please.
It is 44 degrees here in New Rochelle. Today there will be some afternoon showers. Highs will get up to the mid-50s tonight. Possible evening shower as well. Tomorrow, Thanksgiving forecast, mixed sun and clouds, highs in the low 50s. Friday, sunny, high of 44. Saturday, sunny, high of 40. And Sunday, some rain, possible snow as well, highs in the low 40s. Weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. It's voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris. As we come up now on 8:25, we're also going to ask Chris to give us the sports scores. What's going on in the land of sports, Chris?
Well, last night, only one local in action. The Devils lost again, this time to Minnesota. The Wild scored with 6 minutes ago in the third period to break a 2-2 tie, handing the Devils yet another loss. We also mentioned that big college basketball upset Stephen F. Austin defeated Duke 85-83 in overtime, with Duke being a 27.5-point favorite. The biggest college hoops upset in 15 years, going by those point spreads. Tonight in the NHL, Carolina is at Madison Square Garden to take on the Rangers. The Islanders' West Coast trip continues. They are in Staples Center to take on the Los Angeles Kings. NBA, Brooklyn is at Boston, and the Knicks visit the NBA champion Toronto Raptors. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris. We look towards the bottom of the hour. It will be supported by our friends at United Hebrew of New Rochelle, top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgz.com. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn. Plug in virtual reality and Dominic Cigars. They are a licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days, and we'll see. What is your record again?
14-10-1.
So you could be after tomorrow 14-13, and I don't think that's going to happen. They usually
Were there any official Sunday picks?
Did you have any Sunday? No, he's not doing Sunday. Well, so Monday, folks, you'll get your picks for tomorrow. And that will be that. All right, coming up in just a few minutes, we're going to talk with Sean Patterson Howard. She's the mayor-elect of Mount Vernon. Always something going on in Mount Vernon. Now, she had said in an earlier visit that when she took office, she was concerned about the police department. And lo and behold, a story comes out, a rather troubling story that we did a couple of times today. A Mount Vernon cop is suing the city, gentlemen, is suing the city. Let me just adjust my levels here. Mount Vernon cop is suing the city and police department. This is out of Lohart today over what he claims is ongoing retaliation for his exposure of corruption, including a sergeant calling him a, quote, rat and a snitch, unquote, in front of his colleagues at roll call. Marache Mike is his Nick Charlton name. Bovell, a 12-year veteran of the department, also claims he was falsely accused of assaulting and stealing from suspects, and that a small plastic rat was placed in front of his locker this summer. He insists the latest allegations were ignored when he reported them to then Chief Rashawn Zaidi. In an audio recording Bovell secretly made back on August 7th, he alleges that during roll call, Sergeant Michael Kushner is heard saying, quote, 412 South 2nd, there's rats, not like the rat here in headquarters. Bovell 40 alleges that Kushner motioned to him when he said those words. Now, the lawsuit was filed in state Supreme Court, and among those named was the police commissioner Sean Harris, Zaidi, Kushner, 6 other police supervisors, the police union, and its president. It seeks unspecified monetary damages, a retroactive promotion for investigative work that Bovell insists entitled him to a detective shield, and back pay for the time police officials forced him from his job. So we'll be asking her about that. We'll also be asking her about the frequent calls we've been getting from Tom. He wants to know why all of a sudden he's seeing bulldozers at Memorial Field, and that finally the dirt is being removed, Chris. So we will ask him about that. After that, Harlan Ullman will be with us this morning. Harlan Ullman, internationally renowned national security expert. So all of that is coming up. Now, I had another football question for my geniuses, since we spend so much time on Jake's picks. How can, I know in some, the other sports, but I don't have any good instincts in football. In basketball, all you need is 3 superstars. Boom. The other 7 guys can suck wind. In hockey, you need 3 good lines, a 4th line that doesn't get scored on. And it's nice to have 1 or 2 superstars, but you still need the rest of the cast. Baseball, you need pitching and hitting and fielding. What is the difference between the New England Patriots and a team that can't get out of its own way? And how much of it is organizational?
I think a lot of it has to do with coaching.
Really?
They've totally bought into Bill Belichick and his ideas towards the game.
And what are his ideas? I mean, what makes it so different?
He's just the best there is, and he has the total respect of his team. He lays out a game plan every week, and they follow it to a T.
I remember a Patriot player was interviewed about Bill Belichick, and the question was, this guy is so dour. He doesn't exude any personality at all. How does he motivate this team to be 12-4 every single year and as Super Bowl contender? And the player said, "We're so prepared. We just know everything that's going to happen. That it's almost an unfair advantage that the Patriots have because Belichick is so good at drawing plays and coaching and figuring out how to attack team weaknesses." That's how they get motivated.
He must have good assistants too, because you have so many specialists in football. You offensive line.
Oh, sure,
coach.
you have to lean on your assistants, and the Patriots have had a couple. They've it's funny the Bill Belichick coaching tree, they call it, has not been too successful when coaches leave New England, coach other places. Like Bill Belichick was part of Parcells' coaching tree. Mm-hmm. He was Parcells' assistant with the Giants in the 80s and then the Jets in the late 90s. But
yeah, he has not had one success story through the years of assistant coaches going off on their own, which really attests to what an amazing coach he is.
It's all him, essentially.
One of the things I sense about football that reminds me a little bit of pool in that there are people like myself, even if I develop great hands at shooting, I just don't see the shots. I would imagine that he has the ability to analyze formations and see weaknesses and then devise a play for it. That's innate. I don't even know how much of that you can learn.
Like there are stories where he'll just be walking down the hallway, and if a player passes him, he'll quiz him on what play to run on 2nd 10, and he better know it, or else he's not playing that night.
And the playbooks.
Yeah.
Well, he was Parcells' defensive coordinator, and the Buffalo Bills had that offense, and that Super Bowl, I think it was 92 Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And Belichick totally came up with the scheme to keep the Bills off the field, the offense off the field, and to really slow down that high-powered Buffalo offense. And then Scott Norwood, of course, missed the field goal at the end.
Well, who knew? I know we should be going to our next guest. So he does not make that much of a difference. Anybody near him? And what about the key players? Of course, the quarterback, the line, some receivers, but I guess every single position matters. But
And the Patriots have so much depth where if some guy gets hurt, usually it will be crushing for other teams. The Patriots, it's just next man up. And it's so important in football because there's so many positions. Wow. The Patriots always seem to find someone to fill in.
So how you run the whole organization then really matters. Okay.
And he could have been the Jets head coach. He was for about an hour and a half.
For about an hour and a half. He kind of screwed them, though, didn't he? Or did they screw him? He screwed them. He just walked out. Did he ever say why?
It's never come out. The theories were that he just didn't like ownership. He didn't like the direction of the franchise that it was going in. Remember, that was before Woody Johnson. That was still Leon Hess owning the team in his late 80s. And I don't think he liked his vision, so he left.
I like the little Hess trucks, though, every holiday. It's 8:34. We're going to go to the phone. We do believe that the mayor-elect of Mount Vernon is standing by. please welcome the mayor-elect of Mount Vernon, Sean Patterson Howard. Good morning.
I wish.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, Anthony.
Yes.
Anthony, congratulations on being elected mayor of Mount Vernon, apparently.
Yeah, let's shut up.
Thank you very much. And I didn't even realize that I had a sex change operation.
Or fluid. Did you want to weigh in on this football stuff? Because I don't know enough about it.
I'll weigh in on it. That's not why I called. But you never bet against Belichick and or Brady. And when they're together, you never bet against anybody, period. So, I mean, it's just that simple. He is best at preparing his team for the best game plan for the foe that they're facing that week.
I got to learn.
And he's the best at getting the most out of his players, whether they're first starters or second string. He gets them to perform at well above their capacity.
Oh, that's what a coach can do. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sure he's already started his game plan for Lamar Jackson in the playoffs this year.
Yep, and quite honestly, the reason he wasn't a Jet coach is because they wouldn't give him the control that he needs to do what he does best.
I believe that. That makes some sense. All right, I know
but
that.
The reason I called was to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving, and good health, and to wish that for 24 hours everybody can put all the bullshit aside and just concentrate on family.
Well, thank you very much. That's a great call, Anthony, as always. My very best to you and yours, and I know you're going to enjoy the hell out of your grandkids. God bless.
And I know your grandson's going to make a fool out of you.
Yeah, he always does. Oh, shut up, Chris. You know, Anthony.
That's not such a tall test.
You know, well, my granddaughter's jumped in on it. You know, last year I was doing some freelance work. I was the grand marshal. Don't look at me, Chris, when I say this, but I was the guest, what do you call the guy, the ringleader, the ringmaster for the...
Must have been a tall hat you had, one.
for the Hannaford Circus. And so you have to get up, and my granddaughter was on the radio with me, and so the guy who gets shot out of a cannon, so what do you want to see your grandfather do when he gets up to give this big speech? Oh, I want him to mess up so people laugh at him. Isn't that nice? Anthony,
could have been worse. You could have said, I want to see him get shot out of the cannon.
Oh, no, I would never do that. Listen, thank you very much. My best to all. Anthony was on the line. And yes, I know. We're going to get, who is the 837. I'm going to call them. Let's see how this works. And now we listen. All right. No, it's unavailable. You know why? That's because it's busy. I'm going to try again. Okay. Here we go.
We got to get this segment sponsored. Bob trying to call people.
You know, this is all going to get fixed soon. So well, hello, how are you? Somebody's waving in at me, watching me make a fool of myself. It's something I do extremely well. Ring. There we go. We're calling the mayor ourselves.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor-elect. You're on the air. This is Bob Marrone. Sorry we had that line busy. We still have to give out a second number for you. Thanks for being with us. Again, on the telephone with us right now is the mayor-elect of Mount Vernon. She is, of course, Sean Patterson Howard. And first, let me say a happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. You get the extra bit of celebrating knowing you won a big election.
Thank you so much, Bob. Happy Thanksgiving to you and to the listening audience as well.
Well, thank you. Listening and viewing audience, I might add.
Oh, yes.
Couple of things. We can get right to it. You probably saw the story in the paper today. Maybe it was 3 weeks ago, but one of your visits with us, you mentioned that you had concerns about the police department. You were worried about corruption there, and you would be addressing it when you took office. Now, again, we realize you may not want to be talking about any of this openly, but the story today that a Mount Vernon cop is suing the city and police department over what he claims is ongoing retaliation. Were you aware of this, and is this one of the headaches you're going to be inheriting in 2 weeks, or a month rather?
Well, it will definitely be one of the issues that we will inherit. And as I've spoken throughout campaign, we are looking to develop a new culture in Mount Vernon and make sure that we have a culture of inclusion, of integrity, of respect inside of our organizations and forward-facing into the community. So, there is an ongoing investigation, and I will be updated on that. I'm not the mayor right now, so I don't get certain information internally, but I look forward to receiving more information on that case and working to move the city forward.
Well, we do
These
like
are
to
things we cannot continue to be distracted by. We have to do the work of the people, and those of us who are hired by the taxpayers to do this work, we have to carry ourselves in a certain way. So,
Okay, a couple of other issues that we have. We keep getting a caller who cares about what goes on in Mount Vernon, and he drove by Memorial Field the other day, and he saw that bulldozers were finally moving. And on the face of it, oh my goodness, Mayor Thomas is gone, ergo the bulldozers. And of course, it's not as simple as that. He was working on getting it moving forward. Andre Wallace was working on getting it moving forward. But do we know why finally there is activity? Do you know from your perch?
oh, absolutely. I mean, the bulldozers are there. They're removing the dirt. This is, what we have to do in order for this project to move forward. So it is anticipated that the dirt will be removed before the end of the year, and within, the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter of 2020, that the county will be able to finally take over this project and have it complete by the summer of 2021. So, this has been the narrative that's been discussed for the last 2 months very clearly, but of course, because of the last 10-year history of what's been happening with Memorial Field, it's very, very hard for the community to grasp that this is finally coming to fruition.
Well, I know, as I said, your neighbor driving by was stricken by it, and his sense was, gee, they wouldn't let Richard Thomas do it. Why are they doing it now? But I imagine that credit probably goes back to him and then Andre and then your election. Probably all three of you wanted the same thing. So the question, am I correct, A? And B, does the county still want the $3 million back that they previously invested and that was unaccounted for?
Well, that has not been something that has been discussed. I know that the county is looking to actually increase the investment in Memorial Field through their capital projects budget, and we'll find out, more details on that next week. But all of my conversations with the county have been about increasing their investment and increasing their commitment to getting this project done in a way that the legacy program can be closed out in a successful manner.
8:42, we're talking with Shawn Patterson-Howard. She's the mayor-elect of Mount Vernon. To her credit, she's already engaged in some of the issues. As you see, we pitch them up, and she's pretty much aware of them all. One of the things that Richard Thomas has said is, and this is nothing, this is not an accusation of you or anything, but simply that one of the problems you also will inherit is the long-standing problem with the sewers and trying to getting them fixed and getting out of the pressure that the federal government is putting on the city for millions of dollars in punitive fines if it's not done. Are you aware of this issue as well, and are you comfortable that it'll be addressed?
Well, definitely it's going to be addressed. It is of great concern, and, whenever you are dealing with compliance and orders from the federal, state, or county government, it's a serious issue. And Mount Vernon did receive a $1.6 million grant. Work has already begun on the sewers.
Excellent.
Sewer trucks were purchased under the Thomas administration, and they've been able to go down and camera the lines and find out where there are breaks or potential issues. They have started to work on remediation of those issues, and this work will continue to go forward.
Okay, let's move on to something. You became my latest pal or hero when you mentioned that you can't wait to get audits done in the IDA, the Urban Renewal Agency. I get my the water
and the Board of Water Supply.
Thank you so much. My brain is working. You helped me. I know you're looking forward to that. There is a budget out there. Now, is it reasonable to conclude that the budget really won't get approved till after you're in office and you'll get a chance to do what you want with it?
Well, look, I am actively working with the comptroller and with the council and the management services director on expressing excuse me,
God bless you.
my concerns, thank you, my concerns, whether it be around revenue or expenditures, to make sure that whatever budget is approved by the Board of Estimate will be one that will not be a poison pill, but will be a budget that will allow us to begin to govern the city.
Okay, and obviously you don't know what you don't know yet. Are you all set for those audits? Have they put the money aside that you'll need to do that?
Well, I mean, the Board of Water Supply has the money to do it, IDA. Each of those departments are municipal authorities, and the money is in their budgets to do those audits, so that would not be an issue. It's just a matter of making sure that we are assigning people to pull the paperwork together, so that when they come and do the site visits and confirm our backup documentation, that we're ready to go.
Based on all that you've seen, and again, I commend you, not knowing a lot about transitions, and maybe it's always been done, but from the reports you give us each week, you're already up to your waist in this stuff, which is maybe even your armpits at this point. Are you encouraged by what you see? I mean, I realize there's a lot of work ahead. Are you encouraged, and have your plans changed in any way, or your priorities changed as a result of your transition period?
No, my priorities have not changed. I am, probably I would say at least waist up. I've had the wonderful opportunity to meet with our commissioners and, some of the command staff in over 10 departments for about 80 hours. I'm having 3 to 4 hour meetings with the commissioners and deputies in their departments, from fire to police to DPW, planning, Recreation, Youth Bureau, Office of the Aging. I've met with Management Services Division. So I'm meeting, and I'm having these discussions, and getting everything from organizational charts to budgets to critical issues to compliance to safety to where we might have issues around timeliness with grants or whatever the situation is. Nothing top secret that I'm getting right now, but just getting an understanding for the lay of the land and what some of our needs might be around communication and data management, development of systems and things of that nature. So, up to this point, I believe there has been cooperation, and I've been able to get access to the things that you could reasonably expect. Clearly I am not the mayor. And I'm not the mayor yet. That doesn't come until January. And while this transition period is happening, I want to be sure that I'm being respectful to Acting Mayor Wallace and not coming in a way that I or anyone assumes that I'm trying to interfere with current government operations. We're just trying to gather information.
I think you've really succeeded at that already. In fact, I think you've walked a nice tightrope at being able to support the current mayor, Mayor Wallace, at the same time you do the necessary work for transition. So I wanted to give you a moment before you go. We're moving along quickly today, and we'll be getting back to you right after the break, and make sure you have plenty of time as we move forward to get time to take calls and give you a regular spot where you can take calls from your constituency and so forth. But I'd like to give you this last 2 minutes to shout out to your constituents about a holiday message, if you like. Again, you'll be with us again next week, but it is Thanksgiving tomorrow, and what they can expect when you take the job.
Well, look, this is the time of year where many of us take time to celebrate and say what we're thankful for. But also from now through January 1st is also the time of year where many people feel most isolated because they've lost loved ones, or they don't have the job, or they can be homeless, or just in challenging situations. So I ask everyone that while we're celebrating with friends and family, that we also take time to remember those who are in our circle or outside of our circle that may not be as fortunate as we are, and invite someone over. Bring them a plate. Give them a phone call, knock on their door, and just check in, because this is a difficult time of year. The most celebratory times are also difficult times for people who don't have access to the same resources that many of us have access to. But be safe, be responsible, eat a lot, but take your time and make sure that we're taking care of our health. And just enjoy yourself. And if there's opportunities to go out into the community to volunteer and support our neighbors and those who are the most vulnerable amongst us, also remember and try and take just an hour or so to do that even. But I'm wishing everyone who's traveling safe travels to their families and their destinations and safe returns back to their homes and their communities. And, Bob, just have a wonderful, wonderful holiday.
You too.
This is the beginning of a holiday season.
Yes, it is. Listen, you too, as you know, we're rooting for you. We hope you have great success. And we'll talk to you again next week, but all the best to you and yours, and keep doing what you're doing, Mayor-elect. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Have a great
care.
day.
Be well.
Okay, that was the, we set him up for us. He knocked him down, the Mayor-elect of Mount Vernon, Sean Patterson Howard. Now we're going to take not even a short break. We're going to go straight to our next guest, Chris. Or did we do weather at the bottom of the hour? At the top of the No, we'll do it at the end of this segment. My next guest, he's with us each and every Wednesday at this time. He is the city councilman from District 4. Please, here in Rochelle, please welcome Ivar Hayden. Good morning, Councilman.
Hey, good morning, Bob. How are you?
It's good to see you. And you brought one of your staff with you.
Yes, actually, the only member of my staff. As a matter of fact, this is...
the one, huh?
This is Zion Backus, who's my current intern.
Hi, Zion. How are you? Are you cold where you're holding that up? Or are you just shy? Okay. Well, anyway, welcome to our humble little radio station. A lot going on in the town.
A lot going on in the town.
And
yes, indeed. Yeah.
I wanted to get to something. We got a call about it this morning. Actually, we got a call about it yesterday morning. And if you understand exactly what it is, the budget's out and people have looked at it, and those that look at it more closely are trying to understand a new water tax, a water outflow tax. Can you tell us, I mean, we'll get the city manager on after the holiday, but can you tell us what that's about?
Yeah, unfortunately, because of all of the infrastructure needs that we have now going forward, and it doesn't mean only the new development, although it certainly relates to the new development, but also infrastructure that's over 100 years old. We need to do tremendous work in terms of the sewers. That's the major issue that we're facing on the capital side. So, yes, in effect, there is a new sewer fee that's been added into the budget. This is something we're still talking about. We are hoping that several members of us on City Council are hoping that we will be able to renegotiate a little bit the budget as it now stands before the budget is finalized, and that's what we're working on right now. So we still have a couple of more budget meetings before the budget is adopted, and I don't want to see our residents banged, for this. In addition to a 2% tax increase.
Have you gotten calls from constituents about this?
Yeah, absolutely, I have.
Because one of the
I've
calls
also spoken to my colleagues. I mean, I think I think the problem is this: that obviously that for the longer haul, all of this new development is going to yield a tremendous amount of revenue for the city of New Rochelle. The problem is that at the moment we only have a couple of these new buildings that are occupied. Everything else is in process, so we're not reaping the rewards of the property taxes until the buildings are up and occupied. And we're looking at another 2 to 3 years before we have sufficient numbers of those buildings up, occupied, and paying into the pilot programs, which is substantial amounts of money even from the beginning, to cover all of the needs that we have right now. And I think part of this is also county mandated. This isn't all necessarily about the development. This is the county has required that we upgrade all of the sewer lines, and we have been doing that over the last couple of years. And this is, again, one of those unfunded mandates that comes down from the county in this case, or from the state.
That's important for us to understand, because that's the first time I've heard that this was an unfunded mandate, because a lot of people would call up and say, they remember maybe it was 2 years ago, perhaps 3, where we floated a bond for infrastructure.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to accommodate all of the...
A substantial bond, but it wasn't. It's not enough to accommodate all of the sewer requirements that we are required to meet now. We have had to scope every single sewer line in the city of Rochelle over the last couple of years. This was required by the county. We've discovered a tremendous number of areas where the sewers are literally crumbling and either have to be replaced or relined. In a lot of cases, they are being relined. And you've seen some of this going on in the last year or so with streets being dug up all over. And this is unfortunately something that we're going to have to continue. I think the good news is that we are going to have a much, much more efficient infrastructure, especially in terms of sewers, but also in terms of Con Ed, gas lines, incoming water lines, and also all of the cable lines that are being, upgraded as well at the same time. We're trying to do as much of this as we can at one time. It's difficult to schedule all of this. We have issues right now during the holiday season where there's so many streets dug up, and we're trying to eliminate that at least until after the Christmas holiday. But a lot of it is important work that has to be done in any case. So, again, I don't want people to think that we're not paying attention to this. I think we are paying attention to it.
Well, it's pretty clear that you are. From what you're
there's
saying,
a lot of
Councilman.
stuff. There's a lot of stuff happening right now, and a lot of meetings and things going on as we speak to try to deal with these issues the best way that we can.
As the budget is proposed, I haven't seen that line item in it. This so-called outflow cost that would be applied to sewers. Is it an egregious number? Do we know what it would amount to?
If I remember correctly off the top of my head, and I'm sorry, I don't have the budget with me.
Roughly.
But I think it's about $65 a year for the average household is what I understand. But again, I mean, I fully understand people's reaction to this. People saying, look, we have all this development going on. The city's in excellent financial health is what we've been telling people. And now we're getting hit with another fee. And I understand where they're coming from. I fully do. And that's why I'm hoping that we will be able to find ways to reduce the budget. To reduce the budget as it now stands so that we can, cover this by reducing the proposed property tax increase. Even though it's very small, I would still like to, get that down so that we can cover this as well. This is, I fully understand where people are coming from. I feel the same way myself. It's like,
yes.
Hey, you're telling us all this wonderful stuff is happening. We're in great financial shape. So why are you banging
Give me
us
your money.
again?
Yeah.
And I would even go further. I would say that, in another couple of years when the pilots have really kicked in and property tax money is really starting to flow into the city, I would see absolutely no reason why we should reduce the property taxes for the first time in history.
You just got people to lean into their radios and computers.
Because I really think that's important, and I think we need to give back and not continually keep taking from our citizens.
Ivar Hayden, he's the councilman from District 4 here in New Rochelle. He appears with us each and every Wednesday at 8:50, and it's good to see you again. A lot of people are concerned, and when I use the word concern, it's not that it's a terrible thing. It's problematic in the interim, but it is problematic, is that it's been rough for retailers to know where to go because they can't. The new buildings either aren't ready yet, or their fees or their rents are a lot more than what they're used to. What is happening to retail? Are people expressing an interest? Are we going to start directing retail to some of the new buildings?
This is, again, one of these chicken and egg kind of problems.
Well, yes.
And it's always been that. And unfortunately, also, internet, as you well know, internet shopping has killed retail throughout the country. This isn't something that's a new issue. I think we're very aware of it also. It's very difficult for current small business owners in the downtown because of construction, also because the streets are being dug up for all of these different purposes. And also that people are doing more and more online shopping all the time. I think we have a couple of programs in place through the city, also through the Corporation for Local Development and the IDA to try to assist existing small retail and bring in new small retail. We do have a new consulting program that the IDA just approved, paid for by the developers to help us work with developers to find retail for these new buildings that are going up. It's true that the spaces are large in many cases. They're expensive. And one of the things we need to do is lean on the developers to help new businesses and entrepreneurs coming in with the rent. I mean, we need everybody to realize that until we get this up and running, that right, that the developers are going to want those spaces filled as well. It's going to look very bad for their buildings if those spaces are empty. So they need to help us and work with us. And we do have a consulting firm that specializes in that just signed on to bring in new retail, whatever that means. I mean, it could be new things like the game place we talked about, for example, in the past.
Yeah.
There are new kinds of businesses that are developing as a result of this. We're not going to see a lot of traditional
like this radio
kind of
station.
retail.
It's a
Exactly.
new kind of new technology.
No, absolutely, and I think this is where we're going. So, I'm hopeful that we're going to figure these things out as we go along, but it's going to be very, very difficult for existing retail for the moment.
You know what's interesting, Councilman? Sitting behind this mic every day at different radio stations over the last several years, on one hand, we need developers to come in and do what they do, to improve our downtowns, to make our cities, if you will, more lucrative for the residents. But yet, they also have a reputation that causes people to call up and say, oh, the developer's getting this break, they're getting that break, we don't trust the developers. And one of the things that Chuck Strom, the city manager, always said, and I get this, but also I get this with a certain skepticism towards all people who come to the city for help, which is that these people wouldn't invest tens of billions of dollars if they didn't think they were going to fill up these buildings. Do they get a bad rap? And I guess I'm taking too long to ask the question. Do developers get a bad rap from the public?
I think sometimes yes and sometimes no.
Okay, that's fair.
Developers are in the business of developing to make a buck. It's really that simple. They are not building these buildings to be good citizens or to,
they're not philanthropists.
Not in the least. They certainly are not. But there are developers who pay more attention to the needs of the community than other developers. I would say overall, it's been a very interesting experience for me. I've had very, very good discussions and negotiations over the past 3 or 4 years with RXR, with the Bolter people that are doing a couple of buildings here in New Rochelle. In fact, we just had a meeting with them on Sunday at a local church to talk about concerns in that particular neighborhood area. Hamill Brothers have been amazing over here on Burling Lane. What they've achieved is quite astonishing.
Yeah, I'm going to ask about that.
And they do more and more public benefit things. That's a big part of what they do, but they're small. That's a family development group based originally in New Rochelle. So they have a much deeper understanding and caring about the city.
It's not as antiseptic as some
for
of
the
the
most
others.
part, most part, these guys want to come in and they want to make a buck. And what we do on the IDA board, one of the things that people realize is that the financials of all of these deals are very, very carefully vetted. And, the developers are being given some support so that they can conceivably, assuming the buildings fill up and they fill up with tenants, that they conceivably make what would be called a reasonable return on their investment. And in the case of the IDA, that's generally around 5 or 6% return on investment, which is not a staggering amount of money if you think about it. You've been
the margins aren't huge. Yeah,
you've been in the financial industry, and also they're risking, as you say, hundreds of millions of dollars to build these projects. Now, often that's the bank's money.
Right, but the bank doesn't give it away without an awful tight string
and this
attached.
is the other thing people have to understand is that if the banks and the big lending institutions and Goldman Sachs and all these other people don't feel the buildings are going to get filled up,
you're not going to get the money.
They're not going to give you the money.
On the lighter side of this, am I just getting old, or do I not have a good sense of time? But once ground gets broken, these buildings go up like weeds. One day you drive by, there's a story. The next day there's 5 stories. What the heck? Is it me?
No,
well, they're just better at it.
Some of it is new technology. The Hamill Brothers buildings are all prefab, which is really kind of astonishing because they don't look that way, right? Especially the new brick one that just...
the one on Burling Lane, it wasn't there and then it was there.
I know, and it's brick and it looks like an old factory building, right? And it's amazing, but that's a modular building. All of those buildings are. But those are the only modular ones. The others are, once the foundations are done, which you don't really see. You'll see a hole for a while, and it doesn't look like anything has happened. But once the foundations are poured, once the basic steel in the foundations is in place, they go up, a floor every day, basically.
I'm just shocked.
And it's really kind of astonishing to watch it, yeah.
Before we let you go, of course, my very best to you and yours. Do you have anything you'd like to shout out about?
Again, I want people to understand that we're going to be going through a difficult period for a couple of years in New Rochelle. But at the end of that, we're going to have a much more vibrant and successful downtown, a lot more revenue coming into the city. And we are going to survive these growing pains, and that's what they are, and wind up with a much, much brighter and better future for the city overall.
Well, thank you very much, Ivar Hayden. It's been great to have you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful holiday.
Thank you so much, Bob.
We're going to be moving to our 9 o'clock interview in 60 seconds. It is 9:04. Happy Thanksgiving to you, sir. And it was nice to meet you, Chris. What's going on with the weather? And we'll be right back with Harlan Ullman. Chris, weather, please. Whoops, I hit it too hard. Sorry about that.
It's currently 44 degrees here in New Rochelle. Overcast skies. Today there may be some afternoon showers. Highs will go to the mid-50s. Tonight, possible evening shower. Highs in the low 40s. Your Thanksgiving forecast, mix of sun and clouds. High in the low 50s. Black Friday, sunny. High in the low 40s. Weekend forecast Saturday looks mostly sunny. High 40 degrees. Sunday, though, may have some evening wintry mix, high in the low 40s. Weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. It's voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris. It is 9:05, and we welcome our next guest. Now, a reminder, the 9 o'clock hour is brought to you by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, plug-in virtual reality, and, of course, Dominic Cigars, who brought you the picks of the week by our absolute maniac of a handicapper, Jake Schaefer. Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padron, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. Now, my next guest, certainly no stranger to these microphones, internationally respected national security expert, understands foreign affairs. He is on a first-name basis with many heads of state, Defense Department leaders, generals, State Department, Foreign Service offices around the world. He sits on boards. He's an author. He is a columnist for United Press International. His books, his most recent books, A Handful of Bullets, about how we carved the world up after World War I, how it led to the world we live with today, and then Anatomy of Failure, how America loses the wars it starts. Please welcome Harlan Ullman. Good morning, sir, and happy Thanksgiving to you.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, Robert.
It's always a pleasure. So we head towards impeachment. Now, I need my first question, and I've been asking this of every guest in your field or in related fields. Has this ever happened before? Maybe I'm just naive, where an opposition, even if it regarded impeachment, came up with a narrative out of almost whole cloth, such as that the Ukrainians hacked our election, and then why do people even believe it?
The significant difference today, and perhaps the only parallel, was when Andrew Johnson was impeached in 1868, when polarization and politicization was so great. And that didn't occur during Nixon impeachment process. He was never impeached, as you know, nor even Bill Clinton's, because you had Democrats who voted for impeachment. But what makes today different is the polarization and the politicization in which you have two political parties that are so hard over and opposed to each other that any sort of common values are impossible to find. And so therefore, the political process returns to the lowest possible common denominator, and therefore what we are going to see, no matter the outcome, the potential, as I say in my column for today, to spark such as Fort Sumter igniting the Civil War, this impeachment igniting a political war in the United States that may or may not be resolved by the 2020 election. This is serious stuff, Bob. We are straining the limits of government. There is no doubt in my mind that Donald Trump is incompetent, that he has probably broken the law. Whether that is sufficient for impeachment, it probably is insufficient for conviction. And the issue is that those who believe Trump must go will believe that no matter what. And those who believe that the charges against Trump are not sufficient for conviction will believe that the country will be irreversibly divided. And I don't know that the candidate that the Democrats may select to run against Trump will be capable of a disunited nation.
This reminds me why I am in the camp of Mr. Bloomberg, should he manage to make it through this process. Apropos of what you're saying, I even have to remind myself, because I am offended by a lot of the things the president does, try as I may to give him the benefit of the doubt. And these days, the facts seem to be, or at least in my view, clearly are to a large extent with the Democrats. However, I know it's incumbent upon me and you and everyone else who wants to deal with this as fairly as possible to understand just how much the Democrats would be guilty of hyperbole, how much they take a molehill and make it into a mountain. What percentage of this process do you think is that?
That's an impossible question to answer. I think that Donald Trump, as I said, is unfit to be president. And I think that's the overlying issue. Mm-hmm. Did he use the threat of aid to force the president of Ukraine to do an illegal investigation? The answer is, of course he did.
Of course he did.
But given the opportunity to inflate, no doubt the Democrats have inflated this. I can't say beyond the merits of the case, because I think the case itself is very, very provable. But the fact is that hyperbole is going to enter on all sides of the equation of Republicans and Democrats. And so for the average American, if there is such a thing, or for the American who is not necessarily engaged in politics, understanding these issues is extremely difficult because both sides are going to be guilty of great distortions.
That's a fair way to put it. And another issue, I keep sending you to these gray spots, I know. But in terms of the way a State Department and our foreign policy professionals, our diplomats, etc., have to execute policy, and then in steps a Giuliani who may or may not be running a back channel. Now, the president, of course, gets to set foreign policy. I mean, theoretically, he listens to his experts, and that policy becomes law, or becomes the practice, if you will. It becomes the policy. How much does policy change at the line of scrimmage, if you will? How much of it is audible? How much is in the purview of the president? And when do we know when it's the policymaker who's acting out of school?
In some ways, our policy before Donald Trump was very, very consistent. It was more or less bipartisan. What's happened today is that for the last 2.5 years is that Donald Trump makes policy by tweet, by instinct, and by mood. And so therefore, there's a huge degree of irrationality engaged here. What Donald Trump has done, certainly in the eyes of our friends, allies, and adversaries, is disengage and disenfranchise America from its position as an international leader. And there's no doubt or debate about that, even though Donald Trump may deny it. And so when you have a president who in many ways is reckless, those policies become reckless. George W. Bush went into Iraq. That was reckless. He should have been thrown out of office for it, but he was reelected. And so presidents can make huge, huge, huge mistakes that become policy. The problem is, in this case, the president does it as a matter of course and not on a one-off basis. And so I think that's the difference. And if the president is going to be moved, for example, by a Fox News report or by associates of Rudy Giuliani without understanding the facts, and I'm sure we'll get to that when you want to raise the issue of Eddie Gallagher, the SEAL, who has been the center of a controversy, it's exceedingly difficult to have any kind of consistent policy. And you have right now not only a foreign policy mismatch, but you have Donald Trump doing extraordinary damage to the credibility and legitimacy of the United States and undoing some 70 years of American consistency. And I'm afraid that the damage may well be irreversible.
It is 9:14. We're talking with Harlan Ullman about the impeachment, but also the associated issues leading to that. What I'd like to do for our listeners, and this is, of course, in your wheelhouse. Let's put the Ukraine under microscope a bit and look at what the dynamics there were at the time of this discussion, how desperate the Ukrainians may or may not have been for this money, and why our policy was such as it was. What are they dealing with? And a lot of people forgot that they were at war with Russia. But what can you tell us about that? And why was our policy what it was before the president changed it, or at least for that moment did?
Well, our policy was also inconsistent. And remember that the Russians went into Ukraine in 2014 to annex Crimea. Mm-hmm. The Russians had, from their perspective, and I'm not an apologist for the Russians, they saw Ukraine, which had been a traditional part of Russia and the Soviet Union, as moving too far to the west. They saw the so-called revolts in the native square and the overthrow of a president as moving Ukraine into another camp. And it's rather like what happened with Cuba when Castro took over. Mm-hmm. The United States was extremely unhappy with that and did its best to overthrow Cuba, including trying to invade it in 1961. And so what the Russians did was understandable from their perspective. The way they did it was stupid and heavy-handed, mm-hmm. and has caused a huge amount of damage. And so the United States had to respond because it saw that the rules of engagement, the fact that sovereignty had been respected since the end of World War II was being challenged. Our NATO allies were in many ways panicked by all this. But the problem was that Ukraine is a profoundly corrupt country, and even the government in those days was corrupt. And so are you going to prepare to put huge amounts of American resources, which you know are going to be stolen? And so there was obviously uncertainty, but the decision was made that we would support the Ukrainian government. And President Poroshenko made some improvements. And so not only the United States, but the EU has put about 4 times as much aid into Ukraine as the Americans have. It's been a gradual process to build up the Ukrainian military so that it could resist the Russian military. Now, the issue of Donald Trump providing Javelin anti-tank missiles to the Ukrainians when the Obama administration refused simply was that at that stage the Ukrainian military was no match for the Russian military, and if we had provided those weapons, it was likely to provoke the Russians to be even more aggressive. So that 2015, 2016, from the perspective of Ukraine's military, is far different than their military today. Having said that, there needs to be, obviously, a negotiation through diplomacy with some degree of sovereignty granted to the Donbass, of the Russian-speaking portion of the eastern part of Ukraine, not necessarily to have a separate country, but at least to have greater degrees of sovereignty. I think that that's possible under President Zelensky. The problem here is that while Donald Trump had 2 exceedingly competent diplomats in the form of Kurt Volker, who was a special envoy, and Bill Taylor, who was the acting ambassador, mm-hmm. Trump bypassed all this, empowering Rudy Giuliani, if you believe the testimony of virtually all the witnesses that appeared at the Intelligence Committee, to go on an independent, almost pirate-like separate policy in which I think Rudy was out to empower himself and also to improve his financial standing of all the money that he probably made out of this. And so in this case, unlike Richard Nixon sending Henry Kissinger to China in a secret diplomatic mission, which was for the benefit of the United States, Trump unleashed Rudy Giuliani on a private mission that had nothing to do with the security of the United States, but presenting a position to support the president who was using this for his own political gain.
As you know,
and I would guess that Rudy was doing the same.
As you know, just this morning, it was a very small story in the papers. It was more of a story on the electronic media. But the president is saying that is hinting that Giuliani was acting somewhat independently, simply as a defense attorney and fighting corruption. And there's that little bit of a synapse there now, that little bit of space. Do you think he's going to say that he did? Well, he's already, in fact, saying he didn't tell Giuliani to do any of this, that he's acting on his own.
Well, he's lying. If you believe,
yes.
And this is, Donald Trump is incapable of telling the truth, whether he realizes that or not. And obviously, he's putting space between himself and Rudy Giuliani, because I think after all these investigations, and don't forget, Michael Cohen is singing like Pavarotti to Cy Vance, the New York District Attorney, to try to limit his time in jail. I think, if you believe Cohen, that if Trump's taxes are revealed, Trump will be guilty of income tax evasion, or at least so says Cohen, who is only his attorney. And so, in these circumstances, you bet the president is going to put distance between himself and Rudy, because it seems to me that Rudy was acting entirely on the direction of the president. The president got caught, and so clearly there have to be scapegoats, and other people have got to take a fall, and I think Rudy is being positioned to do that. And even though Mr. Giuliani will never take my advice, he better have a really good lawyer, in fact, a lawyer far better than he is, because he's going to need it.
Well, he certainly is, from the looks of things. Harlan Ullman, our guest. You know, yesterday we had, and it's fair to say he's a never Trumper, I'm sure he'd admit to it, political analyst, 45-year Republican, moderate Republican who has moved away from his party, and was saying he believes, and he says he has actual sources. I haven't asked him for those sources yet, and I don't know that he'll give them to me, that will show that the president's tax returns, and I thought this was almost beyond the pale. Okay, that his tax returns will show that the president has been bailed out by Russian oligarch money, and that's what he doesn't want the world to see. Have you ever heard anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt that, for example, his holdings in Florida, one of his houses, was bought for a huge amount of money by a Russian oligarch. I mean, $50 or $60 million. And there has always been speculation that Deutsche Bank, who was the only bank that would support Trump, was using Russian laundered money. Now, that's all hypothesis, speculation, and the like. But I think that if his taxes are, in fact, made public, Trump is going to be in huge amounts of difficulty.
That's interesting, if in fact that is true. I want to move to Syria. It was only, the way they do news stories, it only got 2 inches, or 4 inches by 2 inches the other day, 2 inches vertically. But the president, or rather the military, is back in Syria. And this almost snuck under the radar of everything going on with impeachment. I thought we were pulling out our troops. Why are we back there?
Because we should never have left in the first place. The withdrawal, the way it was announced, the way that it was done, was another instance of incompetent foreign policy on the part of the president. The Islamic State is far from dead. We've abandoned the Kurds again. We've done that repeatedly over the years. Mm-hmm. But the military is saying that Islamic State is still alive and well, even though Baghdadi is dead. And the United States is still going to continue to carry out military missions. So this is very, very, very clear. But the difference between reality and what the president believes reality is enormous. And at any given time, the president may change his mind as to what reality may or may not be. And you can't have foreign policy subject to the whims of a tweet.
Well, we do, that's for sure. Okay, let's move on to what happened with Mr. Gallagher. Now, you worked with the military all around the world. We know this. You know the generals. You know probably a lot of the players involved in this incident. The president went against convention to overturn, or at least make sure that this gentleman would get back his pin that was very highly regarded as a Navy SEAL. I'm not sure who to believe. If the Navy secretary did try and intervene, or he just made a phone call, but whatever the case, he got fired. and whatever the case, he did not go along with what the president wanted. Does this hurt morale as much as they say, and does it, and how much does it hurt discipline?
More. I have, first of all, I have to make a disclosure. I know Richard Spencer, the Secretary of the Navy, quite well. I'm an admirer of his. And I know some of the people who are engaged. That the President's Commander-in-Chief is correct. Remember that in 1971 or 72, Richard Nixon pardoned William Calley, who was the young lieutenant in charge of the My Lai massacre, in which several hundred Vietnamese were slaughtered. My units of the Americal Division. Calley should have been in jail for the rest of his life. But for whatever political reasons, Nixon pardoned Calley after the fact. What Donald Trump has done with Gallagher is to pardon him before the fact. Gallagher's court-martial was a nightmare. The prosecution was incompetent. The leading judge advocate general who was prosecuting the case was fired by the judge because they falsified evidence. My guess is that if there had been a proper prosecution, Gallagher would have been convicted of all counts. Instead, he was convicted of conduct unbecoming, posing with the body of a dead militant, which people can say is a minor offense, but still he is guilty of a war crime. Now, Donald Trump were presented all the information about Gallagher. My guess is that it's very unseemly. I think that the Navy SEALs detest this fellow, that he probably committed the crimes that were accused, which he was accused. And Donald Trump acted because of a piece on Fox News, and because two of Gallagher's attorneys, one Bernie Carrick, who's a former police commissioner of New York, who himself was convicted of crimes, and Mark Mukasey, who was the son of a former attorney general, I think lobbied Trump. So Trump acted not on truth, but on being lobbied. And I think if the facts are known about Gallagher, Trump would not have done what he did. Now, I think what he should have done was to keep his mouth shut, let the process run its course, let the Navy SEALs decide what they want to do, and then at the end of the day, as Commander-in-Chief, Trump would have intervened as Richard Nixon did after the fact. Instead, he intervened before the fact. You have to overlay this with about Syria and the decision to withdraw without any consultation with anybody. And so now you have a military, I think, that is genuinely challenging the competence and the integrity of the commander-in-chief, even though they may not say that actively. If you were in the military, if you were a private or you were a general, and you look at the White House, what is your obvious reaction going to be?
Well,
now, regarding Richard Spencer, Richard Spencer is a very honorable man, and I believe him when he said that he was trying to negotiate a deal with the White House and inform Mark Esper, the Secretary of Defense's Chief of Staff, about this. Esper denies that the Chief of Staff was informed. Who was telling the truth, I don't know, but I don't think that Richard Spencer would have lied. But for a lot of reasons, in part because Richard Spencer was a Jim Mattis protege and a Jim Mattis pick, because the Navy has had all sorts of problems with its procurement programs, the aircraft carriers, its surface ships, its submarines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Navy has been in trouble, justifiably so, and that the Secretary of the Navy designate, Kenneth Braithwaite, who is the ambassador to Norway, name was in play in the summer, so that clearly the administration was going to remove Richard Spencer as soon as possible, probably in the summer until the impeachment hearings took place. So the Gallagher issue was the fuse that led to his relief. That will become a secondary issue because it's a 1 or 2 day news story, and so I don't think there's going to be much lift in that. But the ultimate effect of what Trump has done, both in terms of the Syria withdrawal and indeed in intervening the way he has alienated a lot of the military. Now, a lot of the issue is going to fall on Mark Esper, the Secretary of Defense, who said he would stand up and disagree with the president if he thought the president were wrong, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mark Milley, who both had spoken to Trump about Richard Spencer. And I believe it was Trump who gave the order to Esper to fire Spencer. I don't know that, but that's my belief. But the fact of the matter is you have the president interfering directly with issues that get to the heart of command and control, of integrity, of loyalty, and honor in the services. And that has got to hurt, and that has got to do an awful lot of damage. The question is, how long will the damage exist before being corrected? Will it be irreparable? And does this really set a new stage for presidential involvement, certainly in the second term? At the very best, this is unhealthy. At the very worst, well, you can consider a lot of scenarios in which the military has the right, I believe, to be very upset about what the president did.
We're talking with Harlan Ullman, internationally renowned and respected national security expert, military, home security. He is a columnist and an author. We're going to take a break. I want to put these two, just a quick break for the weather and announce our sponsors, but I wanted to leave you with two thoughts when we come back. One, is I do want to see what you think about Israel in terms of the upcoming, I guess they'll have an election again, number one. And number two, why in your dealings in Washington and with the people that you see and meet every day, why is it that the people that support the president are able? What is it about the rest? What is it that the other side, if you will, the far left, the Democratic Party, whomever, what is it that they've done or do that allows people to turn their heads to all of this stuff, even if you didn't believe half of it's enough? When we come back with Harlan Ullman, first we go to Chris Conway to get an update on the weather. Chris, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Bob. It is 45 degrees along the Sound Shore. It'll get up to the mid-50s today. There will be some afternoon showers, though, in the forecast tonight. Clear in the low 40s. Tomorrow, your Thanksgiving forecast, mix of sun and clouds, high 51. On Black Friday, it'll be sunny but cooler. Temperatures only in the low 40s. Weekend forecast, Saturday, sunny 40 degrees. Sunday, some rain, maybe a wintry mix in the evening, highs in the low 40s. And weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. It's voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris. Let's take a look at what's coming up this week. Now, tomorrow you will have shows, and on Friday, but we won't be here in person. We're going to take a little break like everyone else does, and although some of us may have off-duty other assignments to take care of, like sprucing up the studio and fixing some stuff, but you won't see any of that. Today's bottom of the hour is brought to you by Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and Dominic's Fine Cigars. They brought you Jake's Picks of the Week. Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days. And we'll say it to you when we leave, but once again, a happy holiday to one and all. Enjoy yourself. Please drive carefully. And you heard the people today, don't drive tonight, drive early in the morning. And we return now to our conversation with Harlan Ullman, and we gave him a little bit of homework. He's used to that. He's accomplished enough in his life, gone to enough schools, and teaches enough of them. Why, regardless of all of this information, what is it about the gridlock in our system, the policies of the left, the perceived policies of the left, the rhetoric of the left, that allows people, no matter what the president does, to hold fast? And his take, Harlan Ullman's take. Harlan, you're on.
In many ways, the answer to that question, Bob, is quite simple. It's the personality of Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been able to capture the Republican Party. And no matter what he says, no matter what lie he issues of mistruth or falsehood, the Republican Party has become so cowed. In many ways, he is surrounded by sycophants. He has sycophants in the White House, whose cabinet is probably the most incompetent cabinet we've had in a huge amount of time. And everybody is dependent upon their praising the president to excess, and he gets away with it. And unfortunately, when you say moderate Republican, there is no such thing as a moderate Republican in the Republican Party anymore. Trump has seized the Republican Party, and you have on Capitol Hill Republicans without backbones, in part because they're so afraid that the Democrats have shifted so far left that anything is better than the Democrats. And so when you have a situation in which there's no obviously good solution, this is what happens. And Trump has exploited this in many ways brilliantly.
But haven't we also, in many ways, as Americans, abdicated the American experiment with this form of government? In other words, if we're going to ignore the laws and ignore the independence of courts, ignore the independence or at least the alleged checks and balances of Congress, then we're not America anymore. We're something else. Or am I talking out of my ear?
Well, the problem, or I should say the reality, Bob, is that this has been going on for a long time since the Vietnam War. The country is deeply polarized. When the Democrats nominated Hillary Clinton, she was not a satisfactory character to be president, and Trump won. So you had two unsavory choices, unfortunately.
Yes.
At a time when the political process had become so bitter and divided, there is no common ground whatsoever. And so when you have two intractable parties, this is what you get. And clearly the president, because of the bully pulpit, but because of the power of the office, has the great advantage here, which Trump has seized and used it quite effectively. And so when you have this divided politics with a strong base of 35% or so, who will support Trump no matter what he does, when Trump says, I shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue, get away with it, that's not just idle speculation. He probably could. And so that's unfortunately enough to back the country. And as I also say in my column today, if I had a bet right now who was going to win the next election, barring impeachment and conviction, I think it's going to be Donald Trump.
You still do. Who'll vote for him? The 35% and who else?
That'll be enough, and he'll win in the electoral college. I mean, I agree with you that I will plan to vote for Mike Bloomberg, but I don't think Bloomberg's going to get the nomination. And even if he did, I don't know that he's going to be able to turn out enough minorities to make his case. We'll see. But I think we're in a very, very difficult situation, and I think that 4 more years of Donald Trump will be catastrophic for this country.
Wow. Okay, Harlan Ullman. Let's move on to my other item. We'll give you an A for that good assessment. Let's go to the Israelis.
I think I would give myself an F. I think I give myself an F because because I'm afraid that the situation is so dire. Most people do not appreciate how bad it is.
Well, that's very true, but that wasn't the assignment. But your assignment now is Israel, even after the president, or at least the State Department, said it's okay for an occupier to just take the land in the West Bank, which is a sad day. Long term, I think it's going to hurt Israel more than help it, but that's my modest take. Will there be a new government there? Finally, is Netanyahu toast now that he's been indicted?
I hope so. Netanyahu is a disaster for Israel, and he's a disaster for the Middle East. And we'll see what happens. The fact is that the Israeli government, rather like the British government and the American government, is fundamentally divided. Will they form a new government? I don't have any idea whether they'll form a new government because of all the different factions and so forth.
Did I lose you? Yep. We lost him. We heard the beep. He'll probably call back, but we may actually try and call him if we can. It may be a little easier for us to do than for him. So let's give it a shot. We have the tools. Yeah, he got cut off. There he is. He'll probably try and call us. Otherwise, we will call him. This is one of the issues we hope to have fixed this weekend, where these duties will be separated out. But here he is, and we tried to call him, but he successfully called us back. You are back.
We dropped out.
That's okay. Go ahead. We were talking about Israel and forming a new government.
and the issue here is, will they be able to form a government? I don't know that they will, because Israeli politics is so divided. As you know, there's now a threat that Netanyahu is the leader of his party. Whether that will manifest itself, I don't know. But even with a new election, it's very likely they'll still have a divided government, and how this works out is almost impossible to predict. But your point is well taken. Given what's happened with the Golan, moving the American embassy to Jerusalem, and now with settlements, the United States, this administration has made the possibility of a two-state solution impossible. And under those circumstances, as you point out, at some stage, Arab Israelis are going to outnumber Jewish Israelis. And how Israel is going to be able to operate under that circumstance is very, very difficult to be able to appreciate. But I think that the long-term prospect of Israel, unless they can get some kind of government that works, is not necessarily very optimistic.
No, and they will look like a pariah state if they have to implement some form of apartheid, which they've frankly talked about. But on the other hand, and it always comes back to this, we've covered, and you are certainly closer to this than we would be, and that's why we need your advice. When they gave the Gaza Strip back, which was a good thing, they got missiles towards at them. They had the uprisings and I always say this wrong, the infidel, and you know what I mean. I can never say that word right. But they had the uprisings after they made other concessions. Can the Palestinians or the Palestinian Authority or Hamas or whatever congregation can come forward and make a deal? Can they trust the deal to be ironclad? Because to be fair to the Israelis, every time they do a deal, it comes back in their face.
Well, I do that, and believe me, the guiltiest parties are the Arabs, because the Arabs have really cut the Palestinians loose and used them as a foil against Israel. And so the Arabs are huge problems, and the Saudis are on top of that list. So unless there's a way that the Arabs, mainly the Saudis, can be engaged in some kind of a peace agreement with Israel, I agree with you that it's an impossible situation. You have Israel that's headed towards being an apartheid country, fearful for their future, genuinely fearful, I agree with that, and not being able to trust the PLO or Hezbollah or Hamas, which is an elected political party. So you have a situation here, as I pointed out, which is dire, because what's the outcome? And at this stage, the notion that the president has a peace process that Jared Kushner was going to head. I mean, now he's using his building blocks to build the wall.
Jared
Kushner. He must rip off his shirt and have a huge blue S on his chest, I guess, to be able to do all these wonderful things.
Where does the temerity come from to take a young real estate guy who inherited gazillions from his father, and I'm not talking about the president, and think that he's going to settle the most intractable international problem in our era? What gives these men the temerity and breast cojones to think that would work? Where does that?
Hubris.
Hubris.
I mean, I'm Donald Trump. I'm the smartest guy in the world. I got the biggest brain in the world. Everything I've done has been terrific.
Not his son-in-law. But his son-in-law is not the smartest guy in the world. Even if we accept that from the president, we've got men like Henry Kissinger and the like who've been unable to deal with this. But going back to the problem at hand with Israel, and that's in all fairness, say what you will about Netanyahu, and I've got my issues with him as you do. You could right now, I could get on a plane, go to Israel, have a wonderful time, and feel safe. And that's a big deal when you run a government, and that's a lot to recommend if he had better intentions, that he wasn't an alleged crook. but where do we go? What is the long term? Who will have to come to the table to ever solve this problem?
Bob, I hate to tell you this. You could get on an airplane, go to Beijing and Moscow and feel safe.
No, I know that. I understand that. But there was a time you would go to Israel and you wouldn't feel safe. That's all I'm saying. And I don't know what the answer is, but you mentioned the Saudis. Now, if I'm correct, I'm incorrect, stop me, but the very madrasas that they syndicate in their own country and throughout the Middle East show that Israel's an enemy and has to be wiped off the face of the earth. How can they be a partner in the process when that's policy?
Well, King Abdullah long ago had a peace process that he suggested, and that's still possible. I think what's happened is that you're absolutely right that the Saudis exported their madrasas to make sure that radicalism was as far away as possible. I think they've learned their lesson, and I think they now realize that that was a mistake. And Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, the crown prince, who's the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, knows he's got a whirlwind here, and it may well be to their advantage at some stage to have peace with Israel, simply because the larger threat is Iran. And I made the point before, remember in the old days, Iran and Saudi Arabia were on the same side against the Soviet Union. It is not inconceivable that from a geopolitical perspective, the Saudis and the Israelis could form some kind of a de facto alliance with Iran as the larger threat. And the advantage there would be, despite lessen the issue with the Palestinians, and could lead to some kind of a solution. The problem is that would demonize Iran, and Iran is the powerhouse of that part of the world, and I think that would create all sorts of additional issues, even though it might have some amelioration for the Palestinian-Israeli issue. The point is that you have to realize that there's nothing that's a zero-sum game, that there are going to be advantages and disadvantages of any approach, and too often we forget about the potential downsides and consequences. The greatest example of that was the 2003 invasion of Iraq that was going to change the geostrategic landscape of the greater Middle East, which it did, but not for the better.
Well, that's something that you just woke up a sleeping part of my pedestrian Luddite brain, and I'll tell you what it is. From where we average folk who aren't engaged in what you do sit, it would seem to me that a country that is as relatively moderate, relatively now, as Iran, that has industry, that has oil, that if they would, that they ought to be the guys that cut a deal with Israel. And do they really care for hegemony that much that they want? The Sunnis aren't going away. They could cut a deal and have a great society, and all the sanctions would be lifted. It seems to me they don't have anybody to fear.
Well, yeah, I agree with that, but you have the ideology of the Ayatollahs and the revolution, and to some degree, or to a large degree, that's irrational, but not necessarily from the point of the leadership. Look, the best thing in the world that could happen is if you had some kind of a pluralistic government in Iran that took away the religious control. That's not going to happen. The same thing is true with Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. If you had some kind of a more pluralistic society, it would be far better for everybody, but that's just wishful thinking. And in this particular case, rationality conflicts with ideology and power, and that becomes one of the greatest problems that governments face. We face it here with Donald Trump. It's not a question of ideology. It's that the president thinks he's the smartest person in the world and everything he does is correct and brilliant. And that's not far different from the irrationality that we face in other parts of the world.
I think back to some of the other points in history where people did courageous things only to die for it, whether it was Gandhi in India after he was shot by his own people, as I understand it. And then we saw it where finally the Egyptians made peace with the Israelis and Sadat got shot. So these things come at a price, I guess.
They can, and the assassination of Sadat was a tragedy. Sadat was one of the great men of the 20th century.
It really was. And
as was Rabin.
I was just going to ask you about that. Geez, I'm getting a brain on me. I was brokenhearted when Rabin was shot. Absolutely brokenhearted. This was a guy.
The only good news, it was done by a radical Israeli. Can you imagine if it was done by an Arab?
I can't even imagine. Now, when that happened, how much is Israeli radicalized? I know that I've read that Netanyahu's father was fairly radical himself, and one one guy wrote, I can't remember who it was, but he wrote that at that time that as long as his father lived, he would never make concessions, and his father lived to be like 101. He would never make concessions to the Palestinians. What is the backstory there with Netanyahu's dad?
Well, what's interesting is that Netanyahu's father's autobiography, he never once mentions Bibi. He does mention Jonathan, who was killed in the Entebbe raid, but not his eldest son, which is quite interesting.
Well, I wonder why.
And you're right, that, well, get your own story, but you can imagine.
Wow. What fascinating stuff. So, is it not fair to say that what the Israelis then hope for is just a perpetual stalemate so that they can live and eat and just hope for a break one day, kind of like a hockey team that just plays defense and waits for a defensive breakdown? Is that really what we're doing with the Israeli issue and the Palestinian issue?
Well, that's possible. The other alternative, the other view, is that it's rather like somebody who just jumped up to the Empire State Building and cruising past 495. He says, so far so good. And I think that may be an equal analogy here, because I think the long-term prospects for Israel, unless there's going to be some dramatic change someplace, very, very, very worrisome simply because of the demographics. But it's interesting because you take a look. I made this point before on your show that Colin Powell and I have had an argument about the dangerous times when Powell thought the 60s and 70s of Vietnam and all the race riots and the assassinations, resignations of presidents, over Watergate, so forth, were really calamitous. And none of those same symptoms are clearly as visible today as they were then. Having said that, I'm much, much more worried about today, even though the signs are not necessarily visible. You see what's happening in Britain with Brexit, Israel with a failure to get a government. You have NATO in disarray. And certainly in the United States, you have this collision between the left wing of the Democratic Party, and quite frankly, I think Adam Schiff held horrible hearings.
Go ahead.
I think that could have been a slam dunk, but it wasn't. And
Why?
I think it infuriated because the way it was handled. Very simple proposition. The charge is, did or did not the president abuse his office by withholding aid from Ukraine in order to get President Zelensky to investigate and come up with opposition research on the Biden family? Yes or no? And all they did with 3 or 4 witnesses, they then should have called and demanded the appearance of the other witnesses whom Trump withheld, and then taken strong legal action to get their testimony. Saying if we don't get that testimony, this is going to be abuse of power with Congress. They did need to call in all sorts of people. I think that Sondland would have been enough. I think that Sondland was really the key witness, as was Vindman and Fiona Hill. And I think they had too many eccentric witnesses who could have been accused of hearing secondhand testimony that didn't prove the case. And so I think that, and by the way, I think that Pelosi made a mistake having the Intelligence Committee do the first hearings rather than the Judiciary
Should have
Committee.
gone. I was wondering why they didn't do that, but yes. Hey,
I think they were afraid about Nadler. I think that they felt that Schiff was a more photogenic version than Jerry Nadler. I have no idea otherwise.
Oh, that may make some sense, but Schiff's eyes, he always looks like he's got bugs in them or something. But that's just me. All right, one more question about all of this. No, not about this. Something I'm always looking when I have you on. What is under the radar that we haven't talked about for a long time? And I go back to the post 9/11 period. How safe? And we never talk about this. How safe are our nuclear supplies? And how come no one's managed to steal enough dirty stuff to put a suitcase bomb together?
Well, that's a very, very interesting question about nuclear proliferation. First, it's a lot more difficult to build a bomb than people think.
Of course.
and you just can't get a bunch of uranium and put it in a bomb, and so forth. So, and they're usually careful controls. The other thing that people don't recognize is that the United States has had, and if you read one of my books, I go into the number of nuclear incidents we've had. When we've had airplanes crashing in North Carolina, with nuclear bombs, or for example, in 1980, we fired a 4-megaton weapon out of a launcher in Arkansas that landed in a farmer's field about 800 yards away. So, we've had some difficulties. But having said that, these weapons by and large are very safe. Nobody's going to steal them, and it's far more difficult for even a terrorist group which does not have the technical skill set either to manufacture a weapon or indeed to steal one. So I would say that the threat of a nuclear incident, barring an accident like a Chernobyl or something that one of the countries that is in possession of a nuclear weapon does, I think that's very, very, very low. But obviously, if it happened, it would have huge impact. But I would not put that on the top of my list.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Because a book I did read, my God, it was a huge book, and then they made it into a short documentary. But Command and Control, where a guy jumps a wrench, and at least all that it led, and then some of the
that was the Arkansas. That was the Arkansas Titan missile that exploded. Yeah,
that blew up in the silo, and all because just a fascinating book. What I really loved about the book is it got into the whole evolution of how we handle nuclear weapons, even right down to those protein biscuits that they made that is still stored somewhere, millions of protein, but fascinating stuff, man. Just well.
Well, I think that the larger problem here, people may not remember 1938, Orson Welles and the Globe Theater put on the War of the World.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Program that scared everybody witless. Well, I can see using deep fake and other things online showing a nuclear bomb going off in you name a place that would cause huge amount of panic, and I think that's probably a much more likely terrorist ploy, even though after an hour or so the thing would be understood to have been a fake. Think about the panic that it would create momentarily and what the damage would be that would happen immediately.
Guys,
so there are other issues in the media age which will not have the fully destructive impact, obviously, of a nuclear weapon, but could have a huge political and psychological effect.
Men like you worry a lot more about the grid, I take it, than you do about nuclear war. That's just interesting. Wow.
Well, in 1980, the CSIS, the Center for Strategic International Studies, said the greatest American vulnerability we had was the electrical power grid. That was almost 40 years ago. It's gotten worse. And one of the big problems that people don't understand is that if one of the big transformers goes out, it'll take 2 years to build a new one, or something like that.
I'll be off the air.
And the issue, well, it depends which transformer gets hit. But the point here, Bob, is that there's an interesting relationship between potential fragilities and vulnerability. Not too long ago, two cars basically touched each other on the beltway around Washington, D.C., and traffic was shut off for almost a day. I mean, that showed how a fragility became a vulnerability. And so we've got a lot of fragile aspects of society. The question is, which one of those would become a real vulnerability that somebody would exploit? And I think in many ways, we're probably a lot safer and more secure than people think, because doing the amount of damage that could occur from one of these incidents is much more difficult. And there's a lot of overlap, and there is a lot of redundancy that I think leads to a more stable society. So, yeah, you can think about these things happening. I worry much more about climate change, even though it's not probably going to affect my lifetime. But I think that's going to be a huge, huge pressing issue, which unfortunately we cannot take seriously because you've got two dividing views of it. One is the president's, which is his only weather, and the other is the scientific community, which is correct. And so, we're really stymied, and we've pulled out of climate agreement, the Paris Climate Accord, which I think is a huge mistake. And so there are other areas about which I'm concerned. I'm also concerned about the economy because I just cannot see the stock market rising perpetually forever as it's doing right now. Go back to 2007 when the assumption was that housing prices would always go up, and they didn't, and that helped to collapse the mortgage market, which then got, because of all the collateral loans and all the complicated different financial instruments, almost collapsed the system.
Well,
so I'm still very hedging about the state of the economy right now. I don't think it's quite as healthy as people think. I can't prove that. And so far, the signs don't seem to show that. But given the mounting debt and deficit, we cannot continue that, I don't think, forever. And that's what's really the driving factor here.
I want to thank you. Tomorrow I eat a lot of turkey. Today I got to digest a lot of wisdom. First of all, it is Thanksgiving. I want to thank you for all your contributions thus far this year and over the years. Harlan Ullman, you really you give us a lot of enlightenment, and we need that. Have a wonderful holiday, you and yours, and thank you so very much. Take care. Harlan Ullman, everybody. Don't forget to read your column today. Go into UPI. Harlan Ullman, their feature columnist. All righty, we're going to go right now, and Chris is going to share our last look at the weather with you.
It is 46 degrees here in New Rochelle at 10 o'clock. Today it will get up to the mid-50s. There might be some afternoon showers, though. You'll have to dodge. Tonight, possible evening shower as well. Tomorrow, Thanksgiving forecast, a mix of sun and clouds, high around 50. Friday will be sunny but cooler, high in low 40s. Saturday, sunny and 40 degrees. Sunday, there may be some wintry mix and rain in the evening, highs in low 40s. Weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. It's voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I'm Chris Conlon for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris. Today's program was supported by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. Also, they do this too for us. The top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne and Con, Dominic Cigars. And don't forget to listen in on Monday because Dominic Cigars will sponsor Jake's Picks Results, a licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road. And, of course, our friends at Plug-in Virtual Reality. As soon as we know our date where we will be giving out free tours of our studio and certainly the experience of virtual reality, that's going to be a lot of fun. Chris Conway, my best to you and yours. Jake Schaefer, my best to you and yours. Our guests today, and they were, as you expect, terrific. Of course, our friend Harlan Ullman. Boy, I got to digest all that wisdom. And the rest of you too, Jeannie Zeno, the city councilman, Ivar Hayden, and so forth. Sean Patterson Howard, thank you so much to callers today. Anthony, Mitch, Vince, Tom. It's been a ball. Please have a very safe holiday today. And also, be careful driving. We did do our report, and what we know about the drive is that don't drive tonight because it'll be crazy. Wait till early in the morning or take a nap and get up in the middle of the night. Chris, you be careful too. Great job. It's so great to have you with us. Thank you so much. And thank you all. Please have a great holiday. This is Radio Westchester. We are the radio station at the train station. Mornings with Bob Marrone. You will hear it again tomorrow, and you will hear it Friday, and we will be back live. Perhaps some on Friday, and then certainly we're going to do some tests on Friday. We might go live in the morning as well. And we will be back with you on Monday morning. Have a wonderful holiday weekend.